Chapter 1. I stand at the window of this great house in the south of France as night falls, the night which is leading me to the most terrible morning of my life. I have a drink in my hand. There is a bottle at my elbow. I watch my reflection in the darkening gleam of the window pane. My reflection is tall, perhaps rather like an arrow. My blonde hair gleams. My face is like a face you have seen many times. My ancestors conquered a continent, pushing across death-laden plains, until they came to an ocean which faced away from Europe into a darker past. I may be drunk by morning, but that will not do any good. I shall take the train to Paris anyway. The train will be the same, the people struggling for comfort and even dignity on the straight-backed wooden third-class seats will be the same, and I will be the same. We will ride through the same changing countryside northward, leaving behind the olive trees and the sea and all of the glory of the stormy southern sky, into the mist and rain of Paris. Someone will offer to share a sandwich with me. Someone will offer me a sip of wine. Someone will ask me for a match. People will be roaming the corridors outside, looking out of windows, looking in at us. At each stop, recruits in their baggy brown uniforms and colored hats will open the compartment door to ask complet. We will all nod yes, like conspirators, smiling faintly at each other as they continue through the train. 2 or 3 of them will end up before our compartment door, shouting at each other in their heavy, ribald voices, smoking their dreadful army cigarettes. There will be a girl sitting opposite me who will wonder why I have not been flirting with her, who will be set on edge by the presence of the recruits. It will all be the same, only I will be stiller. And the countryside is still tonight, this countryside reflected through my image in the pane. This house is just outside a small summer resort, which is still empty. The season has not yet begun. It is on a small hill. One can look down on the lights of the town and hear the thud of the sea. My girl, Hella, and I rented it in Paris from photographs some months ago. Now she has been gone a week. She is on the high seas now, on her way back to America. I can see her, very elegant, tense, and glittering, surrounded by the light which fills the salon of the ocean liner, drinking rather too fast, and laughing and watching the men. That was how I met her, in a bar in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. She was drinking and watching, and that was why I liked her. I thought she would be fun to have fun with. That was how it began. That was all it meant to me. I am not sure now, in spite of everything, that it ever really meant more than that to me. And I don't think it ever really meant more than that to her. At least not until she made that trip to Spain and, finding herself there, alone, began to wonder, perhaps, if a lifetime of drinking and watching the men was exactly what she wanted. But it was too late by that time. I was already with Giovanni. I had asked her to marry me before she went away to Spain. And she laughed and I laughed, but that, somehow, all the same, made it more serious for me, and I persisted. And then she said she would have to go away and think about it. And the very last night she was here, the very last time I saw her, as she was packing her bag, I told her that I had loved her once and I made myself believe it. But I wonder if I had. I was thinking, no doubt, of our nights in bed, of the peculiar innocence and confidence, which will never come again, which had made those nights so delightful, so unrelated to past, present, or anything to come, so unrelated, finally, to my life, since it was not necessary for me to take any but the most mechanical responsibility for them. And these nights were being acted out under a foreign sky, with no one to watch, no penalties attached. It was this last fact which was our undoing, for nothing is more unbearable, once one has it, than freedom. I suppose this was why I asked her to marry me, to give myself something to be moored to. Perhaps this was why, in Spain, she decided that she wanted to marry me. But people can't, unhappily, invent their mooring posts, their lovers and their friends, any more than they can invent their parents. Life gives these and also takes them away, and the great difficulty is to say yes to life. I was thinking, when I told Hella that I had loved her, of those days before anything awful, irrevocable, had happened to me, when an affair was nothing more than an affair. Now, from this night, this coming morning, no matter how many beds I find myself in between now and my final bed, I shall never be able to have any more of those boyish, zestful affairs, which are really, when one thinks of it, a kind of higher, or anyway, more pretentious masturbation. People are too various to be treated so lightly. I am too various to be trusted. If this were not so, I would not be alone in this house tonight. Hella would not be on the high seas. and Giovanni would not be about to perish, sometime between this night and this morning on the guillotine. I repent now for all the good it does, one particular he among the many lies I've told, lived, and believed. This is the lie which I told to Giovanni, but never succeeded in making him believe that I had never slept with a boy before. I had decided that I never would again. There is something fantastic in the spectacle I now present to myself of having run so far, so hard, across the ocean even, only to find myself brought up short once more before the bulldog in my own backyard. The yard, in the meantime, having grown smaller and the bulldog bigger. I have not thought of that boy, Joey, for many years, but I see him quite clearly tonight. It was several years ago. I was still in my teens, he was about my age, give or take a year. He was a very nice boy, too, very quick and dark, and always laughing. For a while he was my best friend. Later, the idea that such a person could have been my best friend was proof of some horrifying taint in me. So I forgot him, but I see him very well tonight. It was in the summer, there was no school. His parents had gone someplace for the weekend and I was spending the weekend at his house, which was near Coney Island, in Brooklyn. We lived in Brooklyn too in those days, but in a better neighborhood than Joey's. I think we had been lying around the beach, swimming a little and watching the near-naked girls pass, whistling at them and laughing. I am sure that if any of the girls we whistled at that day had shown any signs of responding, the ocean would not have been deep enough to drown our shame and terror. But the girls, no doubt, had some intimation of this, possibly from the way we whistled, and they ignored us. As the sun was setting, we started up the boardwalk towards his house, with our wet bathing trunks on under our trousers. And I think it began in the shower. I know that I felt something. As we were horsing around in that small, steamy room, stinging each other with wet towels, which I had not felt before, which mysteriously, and yet aimlessly, included him. I remember in myself a heavy reluctance to get dressed. I blamed it on the heat. But we did get dressed, sort of, and we ate cold things out of his icebox and drank a lot of beer. We must have gone to the movies. I can't think of any other reason for our going out, and I remember walking down the dark, tropical Brooklyn streets with heat coming up from the pavements and banging from the walls of houses with enough force to kill a man, with all the world's grown-ups, it seemed, sitting shrill and disheveled on the stoops and all the world's children on the sidewalks or in the gutters or hanging from fire escapes, with my arm around Joey's shoulder. I was proud, I think, because his head came just below my ear. We were walking along and Joey was making dirty wisecracks and we were laughing. Odd to remember, for the first time in so long, how good I felt that night. How fond of Joey. How good I felt that night. How fond of Joey. When we came back along those streets it was quiet. We were quiet too. We were very quiet in the apartment and sleepily got undressed in Joey's bedroom and went to bed. I fell asleep for quite a while, I think. But I woke up to find the light on and Joey examining the pillow with great, ferocious care. "What's the matter?" "I think a bedbug bit me." "You slob. You got bedbugs." "I think one bit me." "You ever have a bedbug bite you before?" "No." "Well, go back to sleep. You're dreaming." He looked at me with his mouth open and his dark eyes very big. It was as though he had just discovered that I was an expert on bedbugs. I laughed and grabbed his head as I had done God knows how many times before, when I was playing with him or when he had annoyed me. But this time when I touched him something happened in him and in me which made this touch different from any touch either of us had ever known. And he did not resist as he usually did, but lay where I had pulled him, against my chest. And I realized that my heart was beating in an awful way and that Joey was trembling against me and the light in the room was very bright and hot. I started to move and to make some kind of joke, but Joey mumbled something and I put my head down to hear. Joey raised his head as I lowered mine and we kissed, as it were, by accident. Then, for the first time in my life, I was really aware of another person's body, of another person's smell. We had our arms around each other. It was like holding in my hand some rare, exhausted, nearly doomed bird which I had miraculously happened to find. I was very frightened. I am sure he was frightened too, and we shut our eyes. To remember it so clearly, so painfully tonight tells me that I have never for an instant truly forgotten it. I feel in myself now a faint, a dreadful stirring of what so overwhelmingly stirred in me then. Great thirsty heat, and trembling, and tenderness so painful I thought my heart would burst. But out of this astounding, intolerable pain came joy. We gave each other joy that night. It seemed, then, that a lifetime would not be long enough for me to act with Joey the act of love. But that lifetime was short, was bounded by that night. It ended in the morning. I awoke while Joey was still sleeping, curled like a baby on his side, toward me. He looked like a baby, his mouth half open, his cheek flushed, his curly hair darkening the pillow and half hiding his damp round forehead and his long eyelashes glinting slightly in the summer sun. We were both naked, and the sheet we had used as a cover was tangled around our feet. Joey's body was brown, was sweaty, the most beautiful creation I had ever seen till then. I would have touched him to wake him up, but something stopped me. I was suddenly afraid. Perhaps it was because he looked so innocent lying there with such perfect trust. Perhaps it was because he was so much smaller than me. My own body suddenly seemed gross and crushing, and the desire which was rising in me seemed monstrous. But, above all, I was suddenly afraid. It was borne in on me. But Joey is a boy. I saw suddenly the power in his thighs, in his arms, and in his loosely curled fists. The power and the promise and the mystery of that body made me suddenly afraid. That body suddenly seemed the black opening of a cavern in which I would be tortured till madness came, in which I would lose my manhood. Precisely, I wanted to know that mystery and feel that power and have that promise fulfilled through me. The sweat on my back grew cold. I was ashamed. The very bed, in its sweet disorder, testified to vileness. I wondered what Joey's mother would say when she saw the sheets. Then I thought of my father, who had no one in the world but me, my mother having died when I was little. A cavern opened in my mind, black, full of rumor, suggestion, of half-heard, half-forgotten, half-understood stories, full of dirty words. I thought I saw my future in that cavern. I was afraid. I could have cried for shame and terror, cried for not understanding how this could have happened to me, how this could have happened in me. And I made my decision. I got out of bed and took a shower and was dressed and had breakfast ready when Joey woke up. I did not tell him my decision. That would have broken my will. I did not wait to have breakfast with him, but only drank some coffee and made an excuse to go home. I knew the excuse did not fool Joey, but he did not know how to protest or insist. He did not know that this was all he needed to have done. Then I, who had seen him that summer nearly every day till then, no longer went to see him. He did not come to see me. I would have been very happy to see him if he had. But the manner of my leave-taking had begun a constriction, which neither of us knew how to arrest. When I finally did see him, more or less by accident, near the end of the summer, I made up a long and totally untrue story about a girl I was going with, and when school began again I picked up with a rougher, older crowd and was very nasty to Joey. And the sadder this made him, the nastier I became. He moved away at last, out of the neighborhood, away from our school, and I never saw him again. I began, perhaps, to be lonely that summer and began, that summer, the flight which has brought me to this darkening window. Flight which has brought me to this darkening window. And yet, when one begins to search for the crucial, the definitive moment, the moment which changed all others, one finds oneself pressing, in great pain, through a maze of false signals and abruptly locking doors. My flight may, indeed, have begun that summer, which does not tell me where to find the germ of the dilemma which resolved itself, that summer, into flight. Of course, it is somewhere before me, locked in that reflection I am watching in the window as the night comes down outside. It is trapped in the room with me, always has been and always will be, and it is yet more foreign to me than those foreign hills outside. We lived in Brooklyn then, as I say. We had also lived in San Francisco, where I was born and where my mother lies buried, and we lived for a while in Seattle and then in New York. For me, New York is Manhattan. Later on, then, we moved from Brooklyn back to New York, and by the time I came to France my father and his new wife had graduated to Connecticut. I had long been on my own by then, of course, and had been living in an apartment in the East 60s. We, in the days when I was growing up, were my father and his unmarried sister and myself. My mother had been carried to the graveyard when I was 5. I scarcely remember her at all, yet she figured in my nightmares, bunned with worms, her hair as dry as metal and brittle as a twig, straining to press me against her body. That body so putrescent, so sickening soft, that it opened, as I clawed and cried, into a breach so enormous as to swallow me alive. But when my father or my aunt came rushing into my room to find out what had frightened me, I did not dare describe this dream, which seemed disloyal to my mother. I said that I had dreamed about a graveyard. They concluded that the death of my mother had had this unsettling effect on my imagination, and perhaps they thought that I was grieving for her. And I may have been, but if that is so, then I am grieving still. My father and my aunt got on very badly, and without ever knowing how or why I felt that their long battle had everything to do with my dead mother. I remember when I was very young how, in the big living room of the house in San Francisco, my mother's photograph, which stood all by itself on the mantelpiece, seemed to rule the room. It was as though her photograph proved how her spirit dominated that air and controlled us all. I remember the shadows gathering in the far corners of that room, in which I never felt at home, and my father washed in the gold light which spilled down on him from the tall lamp which stood beside his easy chair. He would be reading his newspaper, hidden from me behind his newspaper, so that, desperate to conquer his attention, I sometimes so annoyed him that our duel ended with me being carried from the room in tears. Or I remember him sitting bent forward, his elbows on his knees, staring towards the great window which held back the inky night. I used to wonder what he was thinking. In the eye of my memory, he always wears a gray, sleeveless sweater, and he has loosened his tie, and his sandy hair falls forward over a square, ruddy face. He was one of those people who, quick to laugh, are slow to anger, so that their anger, when it comes, is all the more impressive, seeming to leap from some unsuspected crevice like a fire which will bring the whole house down. And his sister Ellen, a little older than he, a little darker, always overdressed, over-made up, with a face and figure beginning to harden, and with too much jewelry everywhere, clanging and banging in the fight, sits on the sofa, reading. She read a lot, all the new books, and she used to go to the movies a great deal, where she knits. It seems to me that she was always carrying a great bag full of dangerous-looking knitting needles, or a book, or both. And I don't know what she knitted, though I suppose she must, at least occasionally, have knitted something for my father or me. But I don't remember it, any more than I remember the books she read. It might always have been the same book, and she might have been working on the same scarf or sweater or God knows what all the years I knew her. Sometimes she and my father played cards. This was rare. Sometimes they talked together in friendly, teasing tones, but this was dangerous. Their banter nearly always ended in a fight. Sometimes there was company, and I was often allowed to watch them drink their cocktails. Then my father was at his best, boyish and expansive, moving about through the crowded room with a glass in his hand, refilling people's drinks, laughing a lot, handling all the men as though they were his brothers, and flirting with the women. Or no, not flirting with them, strutting like a cock before them. Ellen always seemed to be watching him as though she were afraid he would do something awful, watched him and watched the women, and yes, she flirted with the men in a strange, nerve-wracking kind of way. There she was, dressed, as they say, to kill, with her mouth redder than any blood, dressed in something which was either the wrong color or too tight or too young, the cocktail glass in her hand threatening, at any instant, to be reduced to shards, to splinters, and that voice going on and on like a razor blade on glass. When I was a little boy and I watched her in company, she frightened me. But no matter what was happening in that room, my mother was watching it. She looked out of the photograph frame, a pale, blonde woman, delicately put together, dark-eyed, and straight-browed, with a nervous, gentle mouth. But something about the way the eyes were set in the head and stared straight out, something very faintly sardonic and knowing in the set of the mouth, suggested that somewhere beneath this tense fragility was a strength as various as it was unyielding and, like my father's wrath, dangerous because it was so entirely unexpected. My father rarely spoke of her, and when he did he covered, by some mysterious means, his face. He spoke of her only as my mother, and, in fact, as he spoke of her, he might have been speaking of his own. Ellen spoke of my mother often, saying what a remarkable woman she had been, but she made me uncomfortable. I felt that I had no right to be the son of such a mother. Years later, when I had become a man, I tried to get my father to talk about my mother. But Ellen was dead, he was about to marry again. He spoke of my mother, Then, as Ellen had spoken of her, and he might indeed have been speaking of Ellen. They had a fight one night when I was about 13. They had a great many fights, of course. But perhaps I remember this one so clearly because it seemed to be about me. I was in bed upstairs, asleep. It was quite late. I was suddenly awakened by the sound of my father's footfalls on the walk beneath my window. I could tell by the sound and the rhythm that he was a little drunk, and I remember that at that moment a certain disappointment, an unprecedented sorrow entered into me. I had seen him drunk many times and had never felt this way. On the contrary, my father sometimes had great charm when he was drunk. But that night I suddenly felt that there was something in him to be despised. I heard him come in. Then, at once, I heard Ellen's voice. "Aren't you in bed yet?" my father asked. He was trying to be pleasant and trying to avoid a scene, but there was no cordiality in his voice, only strain and exasperation. "I thought," said Ellen coldly, "that someone ought to tell you what you're doing to your son, what I'm doing to my son." And he was about to say something more, something awful. But he caught himself and only said, with a resigned, drunken, despairing calm, "What are you talking about, Ellen? Do you really think?" she asked. I was certain that she was standing in the center of the room, with her hands folded before her, standing very straight and still. "That you're the kind of man he ought to be when he grows up?" And, as my father said nothing, "He is growing up, you know." And then, spitefully, asterisk, "which is more than I can say for you. Is more than I can say for you." "Go to bed, Ellen," said my father, sounding very weary. I had the feeling, since they were talking about me, that I ought to go downstairs and tell Ellen that whatever was wrong between my father and myself we could work out between us without her help. And, perhaps, which seems odd, I felt that she was disrespectful of me. For I had certainly never said a word to her about my father. I heard his heavy, uneven footfalls as he moved across the room, towards the stairs. "Don't think," said Ellen, "that I don't know where you've been." "I've been out drinking," said my father, "and now I'd like to get a little sleep. Do you mind?" "You've been with that girl, Beatrice," said Ellen. "That's where you always are, and that's where all your money goes and all your manhood and self-respect, too." She had succeeded in making him angry. He began to stammer. If you think that I'm going to stand here and argue with you about my private life, if you think I'm going to argue with you about it, why, you're out of your mind." "I certainly don't care," said Ellen, "what you do with yourself. It isn't you I'm worried about. It's only that you're the only person who has any authority over David. I don't, and he hasn't got any mother, and he only listens to me when he thinks it pleases you. Do you really think it's a good idea for David to see you staggering home drunk all the time? And don't fool yourself," she added after a moment, in a voice thick with passion. "Don't fool yourself that he doesn't know where you're coming from. Don't think he doesn't know about your women." She was wrong. I don't think I did know about them, or I had never thought about them. But from that evening I thought about them all the time. I could scarcely ever face a woman without wondering whether or not my father had, in Ellen's phrase, been interfering with her. "I think it barely possible," said my father, "that David has a cleaner mind than yours." The silence, then, in which my father climbed the stairs was by far the worst silence my life had ever known. I was wondering what they were thinking, each of them. I wondered how they looked. I wondered what I would see when I saw them in the morning. "And listen," said my father suddenly, from the middle of the staircase, in a voice which frightened me. "All I want for David is that he grow up to be a man. And when I say a man, Ellen, I don't mean a Sunday school teacher. And when I say a man, Ellen, I don't mean a Sunday school teacher. A man," said Ellen shortly, "is not the same thing as a bull. Good night." "Good night," he said after a moment, and I heard him stagger past my door. From that time on, with the mysterious, cunning, and dreadful intensity of the very young, I despised my father and I hated Ellen. It is hard to say why. I don't know why. But it allowed all of Ellen's prophecies about me to come true. She had said that there would come a time when nothing and nobody would be able to rule me, not even my father. And that time certainly came. It was after Joey. The incident with Joey had shaken me profoundly, and its effect was to make me secretive and cruel. I could not discuss what had happened to me with anyone. I could not even admit it to myself. And, while I never thought about it, it remained, nevertheless, at the bottom of my mind, as still and as awful as a decomposing corpse. And it changed, it thickened, it soured the atmosphere of my mind. Soon it was I who came staggering home late at night. It was I who found Ellen waiting up for me. Ellen and I who wrangled night in and night out. My father's attitude was that this was but an inevitable phase of my growing up, and he affected to take it lightly. But beneath his jocular, boys-together air, he was at a loss, he was frightened. Perhaps he had supposed that my growing up would bring us closer together, whereas, now that he was trying to find out something about me, I was in full flight from him. I did not want him to know me. I did not want anyone to know me. And then, again, I was undergoing with my father what the very young inevitably undergo with their elders. I was beginning to judge him, and the very harshness of this judgment, which broke my heart, revealed, though I could not have said it then, how much I had loved him, how that love, along with my innocence, was dying. My poor father was baffled and afraid. He was unable to believe that there could be anything seriously wrong between us. And this was not only because he would not then have known what to do about it. It was mainly because he would then have had to face the knowledge that he had left something, somewhere undone, something of the utmost importance. And since neither of us had any idea of what this so significant omission could have been, and since we were forced to remain in tacit league against Ellen, we took refuge in being hearty with each other. We were not like father and son. My father sometimes proudly said we were like buddies. I think my father sometimes actually believed this. I never did. I did not want to be his buddy. I wanted to be his son. What passed between us as masculine candor exhausted and appalled me. Fathers ought to avoid utter nakedness before their sons. I did not want to know, not anyway from his mouth, that his flesh was as unregenerate as my own. The knowledge did not make me feel more like his son or buddy. It only made me feel like an interloper, and a frightened one at that. He thought we were alike. I did not want to think so. I did not want to think that my life would be like his, or that my mind would ever grow so pale, so without hard places and sharp sheer drops. He wanted no distance between us. He wanted me to look on him as a man like myself. But I wanted the merciful distance of father and son, which would have permitted me to love him. One night, drunk, with several other people on the way back from an out-of-town party, the car I was driving smashed up. It was entirely my fault. I was almost too drunk to walk and had no business driving. But the others did not know this, since I am one of those people who can look and sound sober while practically in a state of collapse. On a straight, level piece of highway, something weird happened to all my reactions, and the car sprang suddenly out of my control. And a telephone pole, foam white, came crying at me out of the pitch darkness. I heard screams and then a heavy, roaring, tearing sound. Then everything turned absolutely scarlet, and then as bright as day, and I went into a darkness I had never known before. I must have begun to wake up as we were being moved to the hospital. I dimly remember movement and voices, but they seemed very far away. They seemed to have nothing to do with me. Then, later, I woke up in a spot which seemed to be the very heart of winter. A high, white ceiling and white walls, and a hard, glacial window, bent, as it seemed, over me. I must have tried to rise, for I remember an awful roaring in my head, and then a weight on my chest and a huge face over me. And as this weight, this face, began to push me under again, I screamed for my mother. Then it was dark again. When I came to myself at last, my father was standing over my bed. I knew he was there before I saw him, before my eyes focused and I carefully turned my head. When he saw that I was awake, he carefully stepped closer to the bed, motioning to me to be still, and he looked very old. I wanted to cry. For a moment we just stared at each other. "How do you feel?" he whispered finally. It was when I tried to speak that I realized I was in pain, and immediately I was frightened. He must have seen this in my eyes, for he said in a low voice, with a pained, a marvelous intensity, "Don't worry, David. You're going to be all right. You're going to be all right." I still could not say anything. I simply watched his face. "You kids were mighty lucky," he said, trying to smile. You're the one got smashed up the most. I was drunk, I said at last. I wanted to tell him everything, but speaking was such agony. Don't you know, he asked with an air of extreme bafflement, for this was something he could allow himself to be baffled about. Better than to go driving around like that when you're drunk? You know better than that, he said severely, and pursed his lips. Why, you could all have been killed, and his voice shook. I'm sorry, I said suddenly. I'm sorry. I did not know how to say what it was I was sorry for. Don't be sorry, he said. Just be careful next time. He had been patting his handkerchief between his palms. Now he opened his handkerchief and reached out and wiped my forehead. You're all I've got, he said then with a shy, pained grin. Be careful. Daddy, I said, and began to cry. And if speaking had been agony, this was worse, and yet I could not stop. And my father's face changed. It became terribly old and at the same time absolutely helplessly young. I remember being absolutely astonished at the
Match found. Move or get zapped.
Hagakure is a classic on samurai ethics, emphasizing honor, duty, and loyalty. Understand the meaning of Bushido. I have discovered that Bushido, the way of the warrior, lies in dying. When faced with the two options of life and death, one should choose death without hesitation. This is not difficult. One just needs to pursue this goal with firm determination. Some claim that death is meaningless if one has not fulfilled their destiny. This is a calculating way of thinking that stems from the vain, urbanized version of Bushido. When squeezed between two alternatives, it is hard to choose the right one. To be safe, everyone prefers life over death, trying to convince themselves with the reason of their own survival. If one survives without achieving a just end, they are a coward. Here lies the crucial point. As long as someone chooses death without having reached their goal, their death is free from shame, even if others may call it meaningless or insane. This is the essence of Bushido. If someone prepares for death every morning and evening and expects death at every moment, Bushido is their own path. Some people can rely on their natural talent for spontaneous decisions, while others have to rack their brains hard in bed to reach a final solution. Every man is born with a different measure of wisdom. One discovers wisdom within themselves that they never even dreamed of when they think clearly about their own ego and act based on the four vows. Even though everyone likes to believe they can solve the most difficult problems through serious thinking, it leads to values that are based on their own ego, resulting in nothing but evil and useless ideas. No matter how hard one thinks, limited people can rarely turn off their subjective way of looking at things. When someone faces a serious problem, they must first set it aside for a while, recall the basics cited in the four vows, and decide free from their ego. This prepares them against serious misjudgments. Recognize the limits of your own wisdom. One tends to try hard to judge every situation with the little wisdom they have, and thus cope with it, which breeds evil, egocentric thoughts against providence and turns into vice in the eyes of outsiders. Such wisdom is dirty, pathetic, and narrow-minded. Not least, it is too dull to allow spontaneous action. If no important idea comes to mind, it is better to ask a wise person for advice. The wise person, who is not personally involved, can judge the case selflessly and openly. Such a judgment is firm and convincing, impressing others, and can be compared to a huge tree nourished by many strong roots. In contrast, a judgment born from limited wisdom is like a lonely tree in the barren teachings of a vast field. A man who is in harmony with his lord, Sagar Kuma, an opponent of thousands, had long given up his life. His heart was in harmony with his lord's. Once, Prince Sakyo, who could not stand the lord, held a secret meeting where it was decided to force Kuma to death by seppuku, causing Lord Matsushige to lose the minister he trusted most. Kuma got wind of this, rented a 3-story tea house on the Takuinu estate, gathered a bunch of ruffians and staged a noisy puppet show. Kuma even operated the puppets himself. The wild drinking party at Prince Sakyo's estate lasted for days and nights. The intention behind this improper behavior was to discredit himself and dishonor his lord so that he could face the planned seppuku with dignity. Be careful with reproaches towards others. Making accusations. It is easy to find the good and evil in another person. Similarly, it is easy to criticize them for their faults. Many people think it is appropriate to openly give advice to others and give up if the advice is not accepted. This benefits no one because others are only exposed to shame and loss of face. Before giving advice to another, one must first determine if the other person is in a suitable state, meaning they have an open mind for instruction. Then become familiar with them so that they trust the advisor. Occasionally, attract the other's attention by addressing their inclinations and other interests. Carefully choose the best time and method. Let the intended instructions sink in casually, without directly lecturing. This can be achieved through occasional letters, farewell visits, or discreet conversations about one's own flaws and mistakes. True instruction lies in allowing the admonition to be swallowed naturally, like a thirsty throat absorbs water. The other person experiences a liberation from their faults after being first encouraged by praising their strengths. Teaching is a difficult task. I know from personal experience that errors, which are usually long-lasting, cannot be corrected through usual means. True greatness and compassion are revealed when the followers of a clan come together in brotherhood, correct each other's weaknesses, and strive to serve their lord in harmony. How can someone achieve this ultimate goal if they only expose others to shame? Suppressing a sneeze in the presence of others is improper. When an unexpected sneeze occurs, rub your forehead with your hand from bottom to top, which is usually enough to suppress the sneeze. If that doesn't work, hide the sneeze from others by licking your lips with your tongue and hiding the sneeze behind your sleeve or hand. The same applies to sneezing. Sneezing and coughing often make you look foolish. There are many other things you must pay attention to in order to behave properly. Be an attentive guest. It is advisable to think about and note down what needs to be done the next day. The Lord would surely study the man he wants to visit the next day carefully, select appropriate greetings and conversation topics, and so on. When accompanying your Lord on a visit or going alone for a conversation, you should think carefully in advance about the host to avoid insults during the visit. This is the way to harmony between people and social courtesy. If someone is invited by a high-ranking man or a similar dignitary, they cannot be good company if they feel very tense before the visit. The right way is to be sincerely grateful for the occasion and look forward to the upcoming meeting with great joy. In general, one should not make uninvited visits unless absolutely necessary. It is very important for a guest to prepare for a visit by imagining the planned company beforehand. In a drinking party or similar event, it is most important to consider when to excuse yourself and leave. I do not want to see people bored by leaving too late, but also not too early, which could ruin an enjoyable meeting. Usually, too much restraint is inappropriate. If you are invited to a dinner and the host has offered the meal once or twice, it is better to accept the kindness. By swearing never to backbite others on the warrior's path, one also decides to make their military bravery known to all people on earth and be useful to their lord. This means instructing the lord in better clan management after being promoted to advisor. The duties of the son go hand in hand with loyalty to one's own lord. They are naturally meant to work for the good of others, which means striving to make all other men useful followers of their lord. Be prepared for any situation. Military tactics and strategy are determined by capable and incapable men. The former are not only experienced, but also ready to solve every problem in a commendable way at the decisive moment. They are nourished by their unique study of various standards for a multitude of circumstances. These are men who are prepared for any situation. On the other hand, the others do not think about the possibilities in advance. When they solve a problem, it is nothing but a lucky coincidence. Proper conduct with drinking. One cannot be careful enough with their behavior. As I observed at various festivals, most men bend over nothing more than their drinks. If someone drinks when they should, it is allowed. At any other time, they look shameful and clumsy, and their daily mental habits and even their true character are revealed. Be clear that a festival is a public function. Always being alone makes one lonely. A certain elder follower preached extreme frugality in all areas of life. However, an old wisdom says that a too clear stream is avoided by fish. Fish can survive and grow by hiding under water lilies or other underwater plants. Only when a superior overlooks the small flaws of his men can they live in a peaceful spirit. Vitality comes first. When I, Yasabudo, had a poem written on a rectangular card, I spoke about vitality and calligraphy with the following words. Imagine you would write only one word across the entire card, as if you were tearing the card with your brush. Whether your calligraphy is presentable or not depends on your energy. All that is required of a samurai is that he feels full of life energy and not tired or negligent. Effeminate men, as Dr. Matsukuma Mai Nokan is said to have, in medicine, men and women are divided into positive and negative in different ways. Even a man's pulse is different from a woman's. However, in the past 50 years, this difference in pulses has disappeared. With this phenomenal change, I began to treat men's eye diseases like those of women because I could not make a successful prognosis with male patients. Those I treated with men's medicine made it clear that they had lost their male spirit. I kept this fact a secret to myself. So, most men today evidently have a feminine pulse. Only a few men really look masculine, making it easy for true men to surpass others with little effort. Spectators see more than players. Driven by the aversion to injustice. Achieving justice is difficult. Continuously seeking justice based on one's own belief often leads to serious mistakes because the truth lies far beyond the reach of the judiciary and is hard to find unless someone is equipped with the highest wisdom. If someone cannot find the truth themselves, there is still a way to reach it by asking others for advice. Even a man who can never hope to attain the truth can very well analyze someone else's affairs. Just as it is often said by spectators in the game of Go, spectators see more than the game. Although a proverb states, "Always think alone to realize that you are mistaken," a difficult matter can best be handled by asking others for advice. Learning through listening and reading means following the wise thoughts of old men. There is no end to lifelong practice. An acquaintance who is a swordsman expressed his viewpoint in old age as follows: "Lifelong practice has its various stages. The untalented will never reach a point where, regardless of the practice they undergo, their skills appear pathetic to both others and themselves. Their abilities are of no use at all. On the next level are the less talented who are not quite useful and are dissatisfied with their poor performance, yet they also recognize the clumsy actions of others. In contrast, the talented ones, whose abilities are usable and who can make every ounce of art their own, are proud of their skills and annoyed by the incomplete abilities of others. Those above the talented deceive with their ignorance. However, other people can still acquire their true abilities. So, a person can normally progress far beyond this stage when practicing any art. Beyond that lies the highest level, where one ascends to the very last sphere of an art. Once there, one realizes in the perpetual awareness of one's own imperfect abilities that there is no end to practicing an art. Thus the master lives their life aware of their imperfection, never satisfied with their skills, not even on their very last day. I do not know how to defeat others. I only know how to conquer myself. Lifelong practice knows no end. Things of great importance should be approached calmly. A rule left by Lord Nao Chige in a writing on a wall reads, "Things of great importance should be approached calmly. Things of little importance should be approached seriously." Matters of great importance should only occur daily in such small numbers that they can be addressed. This rule seems to advise formulating decisions on serious matters in advance and finally making the decision easily when facing the matter. On the other hand, if someone does not make decisions, their resolve can hardly succeed at the decisive moment. I believe that daily practice decisiveness is the prerequisite for the rule. Things of great importance should be approached calmly. A man who never makes a mistake cannot be trusted. Once, at a meeting, the possible promotion of a certain follower was considered. The members unanimously wanted to reject the proposed promotion because of the man's past drinking problem. However, there was something to consider. If a man is never considered again after a past mistake, it stifles talented men at the source. A man who has once failed regrets his mistake, acts henceforth discreetly, and is always ready to be useful to his lord. Therefore, such a man should receive an appropriate promotion. I believe in his reliable service precisely because he has failed once. On the other hand, a man who has never made a mistake is, in my eyes, risky. How to fight in a street battle. A samurai was once forced into a fight but did not take revenge on the opposing side, thereby earning the contempt of those who saw it as a disgrace. To settle matters with an enemy, one must simply thrust into the enemy and be killed. This way, one's own death is free from shame. If someone tends only to think about winning a duel, they miss the right moment to act. People avoid retaliation with the excuse that they are outnumbered and only waste valuable time, until they eventually talk about completely giving up revenge. One should confront their enemies, firmly determined to slaughter one after another, no matter how many thousands of enemies there may be. This enables them to fulfill their desire for revenge and in most cases, they will themselves be the victor. Listening to others and consulting books. Listening to others and consulting books means preparing for the decisive moment that can come at any time. By practicing Bushido, one should be prepared day and night for everything. Be aware of the always uncertain life and think about which action in what form is appropriate in the decisive moment. Chance plays a role in a duel. The way to preserve oneself from fear and pain in a duel is on a different sheet than the mere question of victory or defeat. The former only requires the determination to never flee before death. If someone is defeated, they should immediately retaliate on the spot to match their enemy. This requires neither brains nor technique. A man of great bravery does not think about the end of a fight. He passionately rushes into the jaws of death, where his true self is revealed in his mindset. Do not think yourself established. A man who thinks he is already established is unwise. A man who is satisfied with fixed opinions he gained through considerable effort has already fallen into a trap. Both men should strive much more first to attain a fundamental attitude towards skills and make lifelong efforts towards the ultimate goal without a moment of self-satisfaction with the little they have discovered. They should always consider their achieved results as unsatisfactory and not good enough, and continue to explore the right path to mastery throughout their lives. The truth lies nowhere else but on this path of striving. Thoughts from my father. Here are a few things my father, Yamamoto Jinoemon, said or did. 1. When someone understands one reason, many more will open before their eyes. 2. A man with an affected smile is ordinary and cowardly. 3. Whether you speak at an official occasion or a casual one, always look the listener directly in the eyes. A polite bow at the beginning is enough. Speaking with downcast eyes is dangerous. 4. It is not safe to sink your own hands into wide sleeves when sitting. 5. Whenever I read a book, whether it was a collection of stories in kana or a classic in Chinese script, my father threw it into the fire. He said, "The court should read." Members of the Nakan family should practice military courage with a wooden sword in hand as a sign of relentless practice. 6. A man who does not lead a fighting group and is without a horse is not a samurai. 7. My father got up early at 4 a.m., took a cold bath, shaved his forehead every morning, had breakfast at sunrise, and went to bed at sunset. Changes in values over the past 30 years. Up until 50 or 60 years ago, a samurai took a bath every morning, shaved his forehead, scented his hair with incense, cut his nails, polished them with pumice stone, and smoothed them with sorrel. He was very careful not to neglect his appearance. He cleaned his weapons and kept them polished and free from rust. Today, this special attention to one's own grooming might seem too affected, but it does not stem from any romantic idea. Ready to die in battle every day, young and old samurai were well groomed because otherwise their dead bodies would surely be despised by the enemy on a battlefield, contrary to their wish to be prepared for everything. Even if this custom seems complicated and time-consuming, it precisely describes what is expected of a samurai. There is nothing special else that requires more effort or time. One remains free from shame as long as one is determined to die at any moment or already considers oneself dead and is seriously committed to both their service and the practice of military virtue. In the past 30 years, many changes have occurred. Whenever young samurai meet, they only talk about other people's financial wealth and loss, their household budget, clothing and sex. Without such topics, they feel tense. If someone chooses a good model in calligraphy and works hard to imitate it, Their hand will initially be unsure, but soon make pleasing progress. A follower can also orient themselves towards an outstanding warrior. Although exemplary followers who surpass others in everything are very hard to find nowadays, one can choose various men, each excelling in a different virtue such as manners, bravery, speaking style, good behavior, loyalty, and quick decisiveness. Students of all directions tend to imitate the unfinished traits of their teachers instead of emulating their strengths, leading to no fruitful results. This also applies to a follower who chooses a teacher that has good manners but is disloyal, and then imitates the unfaithful side of their character instead of their good manners. Discover the strong character traits of other people and follow them. This way, anyone, no matter who they are, can become a good example and teacher. Words of encouragement. When visiting a man who is suffering from misfortune to comfort him, the first word of the visitor is of utmost importance because it reveals their true intentions. A samurai who appears to be despondent and worried in any situation is a failure. He is useless if he's not seriously ready to strive for victory by all means. Therefore, a depressed person must be uplifted. Be friendly to visitors. Be friendly to visitors even when you are busy. Sometimes, someone visits an office at the busiest time and discusses their concerns without seeming to sense the hectic atmosphere. In such cases, where officials often react grumpily and angrily to visitors, the samurai code dictates handling the visitors' affairs calmly and thoughtfully. A dismissive reception of visitors is only fitting for the lowly populace. An old veteran once told me that if someone is focused day and night on surpassing successful samurai and killing strong enemies in war, they can keep their fire of courage alive and prove their bravery free from discouragement. Even in times of peace, one should maintain this attitude. Educate your child. There are certain ways a samurai should educate their child. 1. Build their courage without ever threatening or deceiving them. A heart awakened to fear once will never leave the child until the end of their days. It remains with them as their essential flaw. 2. Foolish parents shy away, making their children fearful of thunderstorms, scared of the dark, and telling them horrible stories. By doing so, they commit unforgivable mistakes in child rearing. A child will lag in development if scolded too much. 3. Do not instill bad habits in the child. 4. Pay attention to their language and behavior. A child raised properly can grow into a useful adult with an ordinary character. It is only natural that children of unhappy married parents will gain nothing from them. Even birds and wild animals are shaped by what they see and hear. Pay attention to your words. A man with weak conviction can easily be swayed by others to their side. During a meeting, you might sometimes hear people shout out, especially when someone is fascinated by another man who carelessly speaks about something he hasn't thought through. A third party will surely interpret such a word as agreement. Therefore, you must always be on guard whenever you meet others. When you express your opinion, you should handle the conversation in a way that prevents yourself from being taken over, and be ready to reject ideas that oppose your own. Even in an insignificant matter, a seemingly overlooked detail can be a trap if you are not always vigilant. Beware of questionable friends. It is wise not to become too friends with a man of questionable character, so that you are not taken over and entangled in his twisted thinking. Years of experience are needed to keep oneself free from such mistakes. Do not be a perfect technician. A proverb fits no one better than the samurai of other clans. Expertise is of lifelong benefit to its owner in our clan, but it only ruins the life of the samurai.
Switching sides.
A man who perfects an art is a technician, not a samurai. Strive to be called a samurai. Remember that skills can only help a man fulfill his duty if he understands that a special talent poses a danger to the existence of a true samurai. Fear no misfortune. A man who is always prepared for death can surely die a peaceful death. Misfortune is not as terrible as we imagine it to be beforehand, so it is foolish to torment oneself with thoughts of disasters yet to come. Never forget that the worst fate of a follower is still dismissal from service or forced suicide through seppuku. Recognize the true nature of good and evil. The setbacks in a person's life cannot be attributed to their good or evil. The rise and fall of a person lie in the nature of things, while their good and evil depend on earthly judgment by humans. People tend to see the highs and lows of others as consequences of virtue and vice. Look in the mirror. It is advisable to get into the habit of looking in the mirror to arrange your own appearance. After I was instructed at the age of 13 to let a forehead lock grow during my captivity, I withdrew to my house for about a year because my relatives told me that as clever as I looked, I would surely stand out unpleasantly sooner or later. Our Lord cannot tolerate clever faces. When people met me after that year, seeing me constantly improving my appearance in solitary seclusion in front of the mirror, they called me sick and weak. So I knew that my qualifications for follower service were now complete. A man with a clever expression. Others do not trust a man with a clever expression if he does not have a strong spirit within himself. His appearance is not a pleasant sight. A respectful, strict, and calm man is best. Despise calculating cowards. Those who work for selfish gain are cowards. The reason is that a calculating person who constantly weighs gain and loss against each other cannot break free from this thought pattern, which is why he views death as a loss and life as a gain. He hates death, which makes him a coward. Educated people hide character traits like cowardice and greed through cleverness and eloquence, a disguise that only leads others to madness. Desperate battles. Desperate battles, or bushido, mean fighting desperately in the throat of death. Lord Noob himself commented that dozens of men sometimes find it hard to kill a single samurai in this wild state. One cannot expect a man of ordinary, healthy mind to achieve great things. Only when he brings himself into an almost crazy, desperate state, far beyond reason and self-interest, can he accomplish such feats. Likewise, a man who is once hindered by restraint falls far behind others in practicing bushido because bushido requires no special thoughts of loyalty or childlike piety, but only desperate fighting in which loyalty and childlike piety can, of course, spontaneously arise. Whoever observes a master of his art and listens to him and then concludes that he can never match him is a weakling. Whoever does not feel inferior to the master, that is, to another person, and aligns his heart entirely towards mastery, has already set his feet on the path of perfection. Confucius deserved his name when he directed his heart to learning at the age of 15. Years of study followed before he became a wise man. A Buddhist scripture says that when someone is awakened to Buddhism, the teachings of Buddha already live in their mind. Pay attention to your language. The samurai must be prepared for everything to avoid showing the slightest twitch. If you do not pay attention to your language, you might blabber something like, "I am afraid." In such a case, you might say, "I will surely flee, that is terrible," or "it hurts terribly." Neither in sleep nor in a playful conversation should a samurai allow himself to utter such words. If they are heard by an attentive man, he can easily recognize the thoughts at the core of the heart of such a carefree speaker. Therefore, always be on guard. Be decisive. An old proverb says, think sharply and decide within 7 breaths. Lord Nyochige was heard to say that in 7 out of 10 cases, things executed hesitantly turn out to be wrong. From the samurai, quick action is expected. In everything he undertakes, a confused mind leads to no clear decision. A man without nagging doubts and with a fresh and high spirit can come to a decision within 7 breaths. Be quick-witted and determined when making a decision. Whatever talent one is gifted with, one cannot perform good service if not recognized by others. No one can hate a man who strives to be useful, who loves his service, works hard, and is always ready to work with his companions. Avoid promotion. Avoid promotion while you are young and serving as a useful samurai. When one is still young, it cannot bring fruitful results. No matter how brilliant a young man may naturally be, his ability is not yet mature enough to convince others. Therefore, it is better to gradually rise in rank around the age of 50. Surpass others by listening to their advice. The best way to surpass others is by sincerely letting them criticize your own affairs and asking them for advice. For most people, only their own opinion counts, so you cannot surpass others. A samurai who writes much better than I showed me once an official document he had written to another to seek his advice. The fact that he asked another man to review and correct the writing shows that he was already ahead of the other. Pure and simple, in no exercise can there be a stage where someone thinks they have achieved everything. Such a feeling of perfection stands against the practice of the way. A man who was dissatisfied with his results all his life, though he practiced wholeheartedly until his last breath, retrospectively achieved his goal to become pure and simple and to cultivate concentration. Pursuing more than one goal is a difficult life task. Pursuing a goal will never lead a person on the path unless it is done in a pure and clear mind. Move heaven and earth. Nothing is impossible in this world. A firm decision can move heaven and earth, they say. Some things seem far beyond a person's power because he cannot direct his heart towards a difficult project due to a lack of strong will. It entirely depends on one's mental attitude, even moving heaven and earth without applying one's own strength. Be humble. There are many who want to teach, and only a few who want to listen. Even fewer people stick to the lessons already given. When a man is already in his 30s, no one will dare to admonish him, so he tends to follow his own path and repeats his misdeeds and foolishness. Therefore, you must surround yourself with reasonable people and listen to their teachings. Listen and fear no mistakes. A follower who does not love his duty fulfillment in follower service is commendable. A follower who is afraid of a big assignment and asks to be released from it is evasive and unmanly. If someone fails a mission despite great effort, the failure resembles an honorable death in a desperate battle. Always be humble like in the first meeting. If all people live in a society in harmony and leave their existence to the way of heaven, they will surely live comfortably and in peace. A man who does not live in harmony with others cannot be considered loyal to the Lord. Whatever noble principle he claims for himself, those who stand poorly with others and even avoid irregular meetings or just talk about it will all be determined by their narrow thinking. Even if a man disagrees with another, a warm greeting is expected whenever he meets the other. He should be prepared to arrange with the other so that repeated meetings do not become boring, and always think about a possible moment when a friendly relationship might be urgently needed. In this fleeting world where no one can be sure of their life, it would be embarrassing to die suddenly when others are thinking badly of you. One should not end up as a money-hungry monk or a crazy or extremely despicable and selfish creature. Do not compete unnecessarily with them. Stay polite and humble and handle things thoughtfully for the good of others, because this ensures unfaltering friendly relationships in every meeting as if it were the first time. In my youth, I kept a repentant diary to note my daily mistakes. Not a day passed without me writing down 20-30 errors. Facing this inevitable parade of blunders, I finally gave up the diary. Even now, when I lie in bed thinking about what I did during the day, there are at least a few mistakes that slipped into my words or actions, making me realize what an imperfect person I am. A man who is too taken with his cleverness cannot reflect in this way. Loyalty and childlike piety are shown by a loyal follower. In the samurai's house, doing his son's duty, as a proverb says, one should be thoroughly dutiful to their parents and regret not having done more for them when they have died. Since many followers naturally tend to exhaust themselves in the service of their lords, few care about their son's duty. Loyalty and childlike piety only show up when the lord and parents act unreasonably. When they are reasonable and well-disposed, even a stranger behaves kindly towards them. The monk Gensei secretly went to the fishmonger at sunset and then brought the fish, hidden under his mother's robe. His devotion and loyalty to his parents go far beyond what is usual. About Shudo. Men often make lifelong mistakes because of Shudo, homosexual relationships in their youth. Nowadays, it seems no one tells young men about the obligations of Shudo, without which their integrity is easily jeopardized. Someone in their practice of Shudo is romantically connected to only one male lover in life. Otherwise, he would be no better than his professional sodomite or a prostitute, which is a disgrace for the samurai. Saikak is known for his remark, "A young man without a patron older lover is like a young girl without a fiancé." A fearful man's love is never deeply rooted. He is doomed to abandon his lover later. If such a man approaches you, wisely reject him sharply and explain that he is invoking difficulties. If the other continues to ask what kind of difficulties, then say, "How dare you ask such a question when I am still alive?" If he continues to probe, strike him down angrily with your value. The older must be certain of the faithful heart of the younger lover. His amorous desires will be fulfilled if he strives strongly enough for several years, even at the cost of his life. If you maintain Shudo, never chase after women. Instead, dedicate yourself to training in martial arts, the way of Bushido. Be stubborn. A stubborn attitude suits men under 40 better than intelligence and discretion. Even in their 40s and beyond, a man who hasn't developed a strong will can't influence others despite his character and position. Challenge the enemy impetuously. If you're determined to kill someone, never allow yourself to think, "I might lose if I confront the enemy immediately. Instead, I'll choose a delay tactic." Such thinking robs you of the precise timing and diminishes your original resolve. The way of the samurai demands that you charge headlong into your enemy, even blindly. During Buddhist ceremonies at the Jisuin temple near Kawakami, a drunken page of a high-ranking man started a quarrel with the ferryman on a boat. Upon reaching the shore, the page drew his sword, but was first struck on the head by the boatman's pole. Other boatmen rushed in with oars to beat the page down. The lord, however, turned away and left the scene. Another page ran back, apologized to the boatman, knocked down the unruly page, and brought him back to the lord's residence. That night, it said, the beaten page had his swords taken away. The lord is responsible because he didn't reprimand the rabid page or calm the boatman on the ferry. Then, when the page was struck on the head, soothing words were out of the question. Even if the page had acted unreasonably, under the guise of apologizing, the Lord should have killed the boatman with the first blow and the page with the next. The Lord was a coward. Do not abuse the dead. When a samurai remarked how sad that the son died so young, I replied, "True, he was a valuable man." When that samurai lamented that in these days of decline, social obligations are completely discarded, I consoled him. As a proverb says, when things go utterly wrong, they'll turn for the better. Therefore, this world will undoubtedly improve. After his execution, Nakano Shugen was thoroughly bad-mouthed at a meeting in Commander Okisenobu's group house. Yobu reprimanded the men. We should not speak ill of the dead. People who have been accused should be pitied, saying the best we can about the deceased aligns most closely with the samurai's duty of mutual compassion. Only heaven knows if Nakano Shugen won't be rehabilitated as a righteous man in years to come. These precious words suited the old warrior well. Understand others to clarify matters. One should quickly understand others and act accordingly. With a quarrelsome man of strong will, you must yield thoughtfully and win his reason without sounding harsh or leaving room for anger. Mind and words should work together to resolve disputes. The 3 principles of service. The deep foundation of a samurai's service is generally to offer his own life to his lord. The samurai must first cultivate wisdom, kindness, and courage within himself. To a layperson, it might seem impossible to possess these 3 virtues together, but it's easy. Wisdom, immeasurably rich wisdom, can be attained by asking others for advice. Kindness arises from working for the benefit of others, thinking more of them than of yourself. Courage means baring your teeth and crushing adverse circumstances underfoot without cleverly overthinking the consequences. I know no better advice than this. All in all, service isn't difficult. Anyone who wants to be considered at least a little useful should think only of these 3 principles. Passionate devotion. There's nothing more important than passionate devotion in a given moment. Life consists of this flame that reignites over and over. The mind of a man awakened to this truth won't be burdened by pressing concerns or desires. He must align his life solely with passionate devotion. Yet, no one is able to fully realize this truth. Everyone keeps searching for other seemingly important things in life. Consistently showing passionate devotion and eventually being freed from delusion takes many years. Once awakened, you don't always have to consciously think about focused effort. Passionate devotion in every moment, once truly realized, allows a man to stand calmly above daily confusion over trivial matters. Rationality is contained within this passionate devotion. The trend of the times. The trend of the times cannot be changed. Society becomes increasingly corrupt and approaches downfall. Just as a year encompasses different seasons, not just spring and summer, the same applies to a day that changes its face every moment. Any attempt to make present society like it was 100 years ago must fail. We should seek to continually improve ourselves in line with the ever-changing course of time. People who only nostalgically look to the past are wrong because they miss this crucial point. On the other hand, those who overly value current fashions and neglect old customs are superstitious and unreasonable. Don't hesitate to ask the Lord for financial help. During my past service, I wasn't troubled by thoughts of my strained finances. If my family were without food, I thought, I could ask the Lord's entourage or the Lord himself for money. Years ago, when I had to depart for Kyoto to take up my official duties, I asked the Elder Council members for financial support. My household finances are severely strained due to my upcoming long stay in Kyoto. I would greatly appreciate considerate handling of this, for if my debt remained unpaid, it would tarnish the venerable name of our clan. The debts don't stem from my selfishness. They're caused by my official stay in Kyoto. The council members reported this to the Lord, who generously granted me a sum. Whoever has completely entrusted everything to the Lord need not worry about his own affairs. Thoughtlessly expressing reservations, on the other hand, complicates matters. Don't let yourself be struck down from behind. In a certain battle, things looked bad for Lord Ieyasu's army. Later, people supposedly spoke with admiration of his retreat. Ieyasu is a great commander of invaluable courage. Not one of his samurai who fell in the unequal battle was found with his back turned to the enemy. The mental attitude of these samurai was evident even after their death. This makes our present attitude seem shameful by comparison. Love in its highest form. The highest form of love is to keep your burning love to yourself and not even open your heart to the beloved person. Receive my consuming love for you from the smoke rising before my burning body when my life is over. Love that's revealed to a beloved while still alive isn't deep. Dying with concealed love is the highest form of love. Even if asked by the one you love whether this is the case, it's crucial to answer immediately. That's the last thing I can imagine. What a complicated path true love must take. When I discussed this recently, some men agreed with me, and we were called the Smoke Group. This philosophy of love applies to everything. It illustrates, for example, the relationship between lord and retainer. As long as someone doesn't refrain from shameful actions in solitude or secretly dwelling on base thoughts, he cannot appear pure and clear in public. Every moment is crucial. The present moment might well be the decisive one. The critical moment could be right now. People who see moments as separate things can't be ready in times of emergency. If a man were called to his lord right now and asked to express his thoughts on a particular matter, he'd most likely not have a prompt answer. This shows that the attitude toward crucial moments differs from that toward ordinary times. Viewing these different moments as one and the same requires daily practice, even in leisure time, so you can explain things clearly when summoned before the shogun, the feudal lord, or elder council members. Even if you're certain your low rank will never grant you the opportunity to speak in the Lord's presence. This attitude applies to everything. Whether you're on the battlefield or in civil service, be accordingly prudent. If we analyze this deeply, we must recognize how constantly inattentive we are. Be prepared for death. Rich and poor, young and old, awakened and deluded, all must die. Death comes to each of us, and even if a person knows this truth, he convinces himself that he is the last one who must die after all others have encountered this inevitable fate. No one harbors a thought of the approaching death that can knock on his door at any moment. How short-sighted to think that if there is any secret formula for dealing with certain death, it lies in the notion that nothing one does can avoid death, that one's own life is nothing but an empty dream. Never be inattentive towards the shadow of death that skulks densely around your feet. Encouragement is better than sympathy. When thoughtless words of pity like, "I'm sorry to hear that," are spoken to someone who has lost his presence of mind due to an unexpected misfortune, the suffering person only becomes more depressed and unable to think reasonably. In such a case, it is better to distract the other's attention by comforting him. "You are lucky. It could have been worse," or similar words, as if nothing bad had happened. If he clings to such encouragement, the suffering person can surely recover and see things again in a reasonable light. In this uncertain world, one must harbor long-lasting worry or joy. How to settle a dispute. Before negotiating a matter at a conference, the chairman should first discuss the case in detail with the person directly involved. Then listen to the opinions of others present at the conference and make a decision. Otherwise, someone else might get hurt. It is also advisable, in matters that require serious consultation, to privately ask for comments from those who are not involved or who stand outside the ordinary mass, as they can analyze them reasonably, being unbiased towards the matter. Members of one's own group tend to take sides in favor of their own men upon request. Their comments are then naturally of no use. Gods and impurity. They say of gods that they hate impurity, yet I do not pray to them daily without self-interest. I was long devout towards them and prayed for my luck on the battlefield, where I was supposed to fight, rising over blood-stained and road dead bodies. If the gods now look away because they despise my impurity, I must accept what comes. With this fate, I bow to the gods whether I am pure or not. The short life of my husband. The life of my husband is only a fleeting moment. A man should spend his life doing what he truly wants. In this short life, it would be idiotic for a man to force himself into something he does not like and thus spend his existence suffering. If this thought is, of course, misinterpreted, it is harmful. Therefore, I kept it to myself and never told young men. I like my naps. I think about them stylishly, and according to my current circumstances, I only want to stay in the house and enjoy sleeping. Appearance. The appearance of a person shows his dignity and is an expression of the depth of his character. His concentrated effort, cheerful attitude, silent pose, polite disposition, posture, gritted teeth, and piercing gaze. All this shows that such an external appearance stems from constant attention and seriousness. A man of low birth in a high position. A man of lower origin who now holds an important position previously gave cause for promotion. His virtue was worthy of his rise. If others do not want to work with a person of simple origin or feel embarrassed serving under a man who was only a foot soldier until recently, they are unforgivably misguided. If the man of low birth, who has attained a noble position, is endowed with more virtue than the one who was already born into that status, the former must be respected more strongly. Respectful distance. A samurai must consider that the lord, ministers, and older council members must keep a respectful distance from him so that he can undertake something great. If these people completely loosen up in his presence and allow themselves to become, it will be difficult for him to carry out a great endeavor. Personal favoritism through the superior via relationships damages character. A man who is supported by personal relationships and favors cannot express his own opinion. Despite his years of hard-fought service, people will contemptuously say that he enjoyed special privileges because of his personal bond with the superior. This calls his entire service into question. Keep your mouth shut. Be careful not to make remarks that provoke resistance in connection with current matters. When there are complications, people tend to get excited and unconsciously talk about nothing else. Visiting someone. Before visiting someone for a small chat, you should inform the other about the planned visit. Otherwise, you might find the host worried and facing unusual difficulties, which would ruin the pleasure of the visit. In general, it is better to visit someone only if you are invited. Even if you are invited, a visit to a depressing and unpleasant meeting can end too often, allowing random meetings to have no calm conversations from heart to heart. Even from meetings for passing time, mistakes often arise, but even if you are affected by misfortune and worry, you should not neglect to receive visitors. Do not be speechless. If someone, whether drunk or simply talking nonsense, makes a rude remark in your presence that you cannot ignore, it is advisable to respond with a few words to clean up the situation. A man whose spirit quickly burns into anger is too impatient to immediately counter with an appropriate remark, feels cornered and draws his sword. Always staying silent is cowardly. The effect of appropriate words that must be uttered on the spot must be well considered in one's own mind. Selfish desires in protest. Shogun said, selfish desires are included in the word Khan, meaning open protest against the Lord. Such protest should not be raised in follower service. No one knows if he ever admonished his Lord, nor did he ever really convince his Lord through pure logic. He always influenced his Lord in silence. The old grandfather of Kasumar never requested an audience to register protest against his Lord. Usually, he seized a favorable opportunity to advise the Lord privately, where his words were gladly accepted because no one knew. The Lord's mistakes never surfaced. When one's own counsel is private, it does not count towards the Lord's approval. The follower must seriously destroy his brain to gain the Lord's approval through other objective paths. Then he will surely become tied to repeated advice and, with his misdeeds, to the follower's path, to stand stronger to protect the Lord's mistakes from becoming known in public. Don't fail through life. Everyone fails sometimes due to impatience in a great undertaking. Always think that the time is not yet come, and you can see how your burning desires materialize much earlier than expected. That is, in due time. Imagine how things will look in 15 years. The world may have been drastically changed. In this gradually deteriorating world, people lose their abilities over time, and silver is replaced by gold as treasure. When gold reserves are exhausted, or copper replaces silver when all silver is gone, relentless effort from this moment can make someone a useful man in 15 years. What is nothing but a fleeting moment in a dream, as long as someone carefully attends to his health, he may perhaps see his long-held dream of service as a useful follower to the Lord come true. If the world is full of outstanding men, it is hard to surpass others. During an era in which everything decays, it is much easier to be someone significant. The story of my life. I was born when my father was already 70 years old. He always said it wouldn't bother him to sell me to a salt merchant or someone else as takuso. He heard my father, Lord Katsuig, always tells me that you even practice in your follower service when you are not being watched by others. Your loyal service will surely appear useful to your descendants to the Lord. Then he called me Matsukame, after which Hideyoshi Risemon kindly appointed Hakamatu Keretusam to me. At the age of 9, I was called as a young man to Lord with Kuzushige and assigned the name Fu. When I also served Prince Tunashige, I liked jumping onto his fire pit with a blanket, letting myself be carried on his back and causing all sorts of nonsense. In everyone's eyes, I was a real rascal. When I became 13, Lord Mitakusige ordered the initiation rite for me. After a year of self-imposed restriction in my house, I reported myself on May 1st of the following year as a squire under the new name Ichiu. Humiliated by those who looked down on me as a samurai of low rank, I tried since day and night to find out how I could best strive in my service. At that time, I visited the residence of Godoemon to listen to his speeches every night. One night he said, "The old men claim that those attracted by fame and wealth are not followers, nor are those who are not attracted to them, but no one would seriously think." When I looked hard after Da's effort, I suddenly saw my path open before me. Sun's instruction taught me that the highest service of a follower is always to speak before the Lord for the protection of the clan and to win a ministerial post for this purpose instead of remaining low in the hierarchy. Convinced that one should seek progress not for personal fame and wealth, but for the benefit of one's highest service, I decided to become a minister. A man who was promoted to a high post in his youth later always proved ineffective, so I worked day and night and finally settled in my 50s, shedding yellow tears, if not blood tears. Despite my deep efforts, I died. The Lord, before I had held the post of minister, Those who had already been promoted to the highest ranks dishonored his name, after which I was called what I am now. While on one hand, I could not fulfill my greatest wish to serve as a minister, on the other hand, my years of hard effort towards the goal were comparable to the final fulfillment. It is true, if a man sets a goal, he can achieve it. Those who took care of the deceased lord and who were punished after his death had caused the punishment themselves because they acted out of self-deception. Even if the story of my life sounds paradoxical, unfathomable fate has guided me through my life. I reveal it to you today in the silence of the mountain. Envious followers. Once there was a newcomer among those who stood close to Lord Nao Shig, who was particularly favored. Older followers asked for an audience with the Lord. They said to him, "Lord, it seems that you particularly care for the son whom we did not see on the battlefield and heard nothing about his usefulness. Could you tell us the reasons why this man is in your service and why he is favored by you?" "You are right," explained the Lord. "This man is not useful in times of battle, but I have taken a liking to him. I feel reassured when I assign him to lowly tasks. I cannot ask experienced followers like you to perform such lowly tasks. I depend on you in times of war." A brave follower who became a bandit. The impoverished Saitono Suk one day had no money left for rice, which his wife lamented. Upon hearing her concern, Jonuk left the house with his swords in hand and said, "Although you are a woman, you have a limited mind. You lose your heart over something trivial like the desire for rice. There is rice everywhere for us. Just wait a little." Then he looked down the street and saw farmers with their horses carrying rice on their backs. Jonosuke asked where the farmers were going, and they replied that they were on their way to the fair at the castle. "In this case," Jonosuke said, "bring everything along here and leave it in my house. I, Saito Jonosuke, need rice for the officials here and there. Carrying this heavy load of rice to go here and there must be very arduous for you. Leave the rice with me and show my receipt to the village chief." His words could not convince the farmers, and they left angrily. Jonosuke drew his sword and ordered them to stop. Thus the farmers were forced to carry the rice into his house and return home with his receipt. Jonosuke showed the rice to his wife and boasted, "Here are mountains of rice. Take as much as you want." This incident soon became known. Jonosuke reported it just as it had transpired to the officials who investigated the case. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Lord Katsushige ordered an aide to inform his retired father, Lord Naoshige, of the evidence of Jonosuke's guilt. Upon hearing this news, the retired lord addressed the aide without a word to his wife. "You have just heard that Jonosuke is to be executed. How regrettable. He defended the province of Seizen in bloody battles like a wild man, risking his life. That was more valuable than all of Japan and all of China combined. He was one of the few whose superior service enabled our comfortable and peaceful lives as lord and lord's wife. Jonosuke is a man of incomparable bravery who distinguished himself multiple times on the battlefield. I have driven him into this wretched existence in which he sometimes had nothing to eat. How could I survive myself if such a follower were to be killed?" The couple mourned Jonosuke's fate with tears of resentment in their eyes. Surprised, the aide hastily withdrew and informed Lord Katsushige of Lord Naoshige's grief as he had experienced it. "How kind you are," said the impressed Lord Katsushige. "I have long sought a way to atone for my son's guilt. How could I let Jonosuke be killed and thereby torment my parents, who hold him in such high esteem? Hurry and inform them that he will be pardoned." Upon hearing this, Lord Naoshige folded his hands in prayer and bowed before the main citadel. "He is my own son, and I am so grateful to him for his consideration. Nothing brings me more joy than this news." an aggressive spirit like Prince Akin. Lord Naosig, due to an official matter at the Third Citadel, had to realize that the Lord was not there, and no one knew where he was. Even during the second summons the next day, the Lord remained missing. After a thorough search of the castle grounds, the Lord was finally found on the lookout tower. The prince immediately climbed up and asked the Lord what he was doing there. Lord Naosig replied, "For a few days I have been observing the public morals of our clan." Further, he explained, what this means is observing and analyzing passers-by on the street. Unfortunately, the soldiers' morale of the province Shizhen has been weakening lately. A man in your position must remember what I say. Most passers-by look down because their spirits have become friendly. Without a violent spirit, however, a samurai's assault cannot have any power. From a man with an unbending heart, who always considers everything sincerely and honestly, one cannot expect him to fulfill male duties. Sometimes one must boast and keep one's spirit aggressive and carefree to become a samurai. Hence, it is said that Prince Akinokami, who withdrew his oath to die, Kuranojo, the unrivaled master in sword fighting, served Lord Naosige and was blessed by his extraordinary affection. Lord Kuranojo offered his written oath to follow him to the other world through seppuku upon his death. Later, Kuranojo got into a legal dispute with a farmer who was tried before the clan's council, whom he held responsible for sufficient reasons. Fuming with anger, Kuranojo turned to his lord. "How can a samurai who is sacrificed for a farmer follow his lord to the underworld through seppuku? Please release me from my oath." Lord Naosige sighed. "In a legal dispute one wins and the other loses. You are well versed in martial arts but know little about the world. How regrettable." Then he handed him back the written oath. "Be constant."
Awakening to the Natural State by John Wheeler. Chapter 1, Meeting Sailor Bob Adamson. I had been on the spiritual path for my teenage years. For about 30 years I had been involved in various paths and practices, including Christianity, Theosophy, the teachings of J. Krishnamurti, Buddhism, Hinduism, and yoga. There were others paths and teachers also, too numerous to mention here. In my mid-20s, I was introduced to Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj through books on their lives and teachings. Something about those great Indian teachers of non-dual spirituality seemed solid and unshakable. I found myself returning to their teachings over the years, even though I can't say I fully or even partially understood or experienced what they were talking about. Along the way, I did the circuit of many of the contemporary teachers involved in non-dual spirituality. There was undoubtedly a benefit, but I was not fully satisfied for some reason. Either it was my confusion or something was not fully clear in the teachings being presented. Most likely the former. For some reason my destiny was to meet Sailor Bob Adamson, one of Nisargadatta Maharaj's Western students. What I found was that there was only so much I could get from books and meditating on my own. The growth was there, but it was often slow, and I was not getting much direct experience. I vaguely felt that I was progressing, but if I honestly looked at my experience, I did not fully understand what the teachers were pointing to. Most importantly, my day-to-day life was not free of suffering. I knew the seeking was not over, something was missing. Had I not met Bob Adamson, the seeking might have gone on for decades, or at least until I met someone with a real understanding. Who knows who that might have been or when, but barring that, I am pretty sure the seeking and suffering would have continued for a long time. At one point, I met some Ramana Maharshi followers who had been on the path of self-inquiry for 20 or 30 years and still working at it, I might add. I was nowhere near their level of devotion, so it was pretty much out the picture that that approach would work for me. As I look at this now, it is not so much Ramana's teaching that is at fault, but the mind's inevitable tendency to turn any teaching into a practice. Practices, as I eventually learned, usually are interminable. This is because they are often based on false premises. Intuitively, I felt that it was important for me to meet someone who had realized their true nature, someone whom I could trust, someone whom I could talk with in order to share my doubts and concerns. However, I was unsure which teachers were authentic. None seemed to resonate fully. I used to read Nisargadatta Maharaj's dialogues frequently. I could not understand his teaching fully, given all the Hindu verbiage and translation issues he originally spoke in Marathi, but I felt intuitively that he was a free being. Many spiritual seekers, through reading his words, can sense the genuineness of his realization, even if they do not always experience everything he talks about. I used to wonder if there was anyone still living who had met Nisargadatta Maharaj and had really got the experience of self-knowledge. After all those years of searching, I eventually stumbled across Bob Adamson. Something resonated strongly. Even when I read the pages on his website, there was a strong feeling of maybe this is it. Just prior to discovering Bob Adamson, I had a vivid dream of Nisargadatta Maharaj, in which he was encouraging me not to give up the search for spiritual understanding. Shortly afterwards, I learned about Bob Adamson. Not wanting to miss the chance of meeting an authentic teacher, having missed the chance to see Nisargadatta Maharaj while he was alive, I decided to visit Bob in person in Australia. You can imagine my motivation, or perhaps desperation, in going to Australia on the chance that he might be able to clarify my doubts and questions. What I have found is that the understanding of our true nature almost never comes from reading books or thinking about it. The best books are primarily the records of dialogues that took place between a seeker and a teacher at some point in the past. In reading such books, we are trying to understand an experience that took place in the past through words and concepts on the page. A book is like a map pointing to something real that was experienced in a dialogue between living people. Usually, we do not have a clear understanding of what is being revealed, at least I didn't, and we are trying to figure it out in the mind. This is a noble attempt, but as Bob Adamson pointed out within a few minutes of talking to him, the answer can never be found in the mind. The experience of spiritual understanding and freedom is not forthcoming, so we naturally assume that we are not there wherever there is. We think there must be some technique or path involved to get there, but somehow we are not quite sure what it is. The result is that the mind keeps generating the same old bondage and suffering. This is a frustrating cycle, because we intuitively feel a glimmer of light or truth in the readings, but the actual experience eludes us. The majority of seekers that I have met have had a similar experience. Many are driven to try to find a living teacher, in order to get some guidance and assistance on the spiritual path. This was what happened for me. I met many teachers, but it wasn't until I met Bob Adamson that I was convinced that I was dealing with someone who had fully realized his true nature. Something radically shifted for me because I came face to face with the vitality, the confidence, the energy of that understanding. It was a remarkable experience and quite different from anything I had encountered in my years of seeking. The first day after I arrived, we had a chance to meet and talk. As we sat together, he looked me in the eyes and said point blank, "Do you have any doubts or questions? Is there anything you need to know?" It was somewhat disarming because I realized he was free of doubts and was essentially offering me a chance to have the same experience for myself right then and there. The implication, it seemed to me, was the seeking is over, the reading is over. You are here. Are you ready to go for this completely here and now? Fortunately, I jumped at the chance. I cast aside my theoretical knowledge and got down to getting off my chest my real doubts, questions, and problems. Surprisingly, things cleared up very quickly. Being face to face with that clarity, coupled with my own desire to be free, allowed things to shift quickly. The basic teaching is very simple, almost too simple. It is so simple the mind overlooks it. What I didn't realize was that it has nothing to do with reading, meditating, doing something, working something out, stilling the mind, and so on. All of the techniques are looking in the wrong direction. Nisargadatta Maharaj used to say, understanding is all. In essence, Bob was saying, right now in your direct experience, see what your real nature is. What are you right now? What have you always been? The thinking mind is useless for this because seeing or looking is not a conceptual function at all. It is more like seeing an apple in your hand. You just look, not think. Right now as you read this, you exist and you are aware that you exist. You are undoubtedly present and aware. Before the next thought arises, you are absolutely certain of the fact of your own being, your own awareness, your own presence. This awareness is what you are, it is what you always have been. All thoughts, perceptions, sensations, and feelings appear within or upon that. This awareness does not move, change, or shift at any time. It is always free and completely untouched. However, it is not a thing or an object that you can see or grasp. The mind, being simply thoughts arising in awareness, cannot grasp it or know it or even think about it. Yet, as Bob says, you cannot deny the fact of your own being. It is palpably obvious, and yet, from the time we were born, no one has pointed this out. Once it is pointed out, it can be grasped or understood very quickly because it is just a matter of noticing, oh, that is what I am. It is a bright, luminous, empty presence of awareness. It is absolutely radiant, yet without form. It is seemingly intangible, but the most solid fact in your existence. It is effortlessly here right now, forever untouched. Without taking a step, you have arrived, you are home. No practice can reveal this because practices are in time and in the mind. Practices aim at a result, but you as presence awareness are here already, only you don't recognize it till it is pointed out. Once seen, you can't lose it, and you don't have to practice to exist to be. This is, in essence, what Bob pointed out to me in the first conversation I had with him. Once I saw this, I felt very clear and free immediately. Later, some thoughts came up, some old personality patterns, some old definitions of who I thought myself to be. I seemed to lose the clear understanding of my nature as presence awareness. The next day I talked to Bob about it. He said, "Let's have a look. Do you exist? Are you aware? What is illumining the thought that you have lost it?" Then I realized that thoughts of suffering were only passing concepts being illumined by the ever-present awareness. I hadn't lost anything at all. The awareness that we are is never obscured. Suffering seems real because we don't have a clear understanding of our true nature. Instead, we believe the passing thoughts such as "I am no good," "I am not there yet," "I am stuck," or whatever the thought may be. Eventually we understand that we are not those thoughts. Once our real self is pointed out, the suffering loses its grip. Bob pointed out that there is no person here at all. The person that we think we are is an imaginary concept. There are thoughts and feelings and perceptions, but they are not a problem. They just rise and fall like dust motes in the light of the presence awareness that we are. The closest that the mind can come to representing who we are is the thought "I am." But that thought is not who we really are. Whether that thought is there or not, we still exist. We know the thought "I am." That thought is the start of the false sense of an individual, a separate I. Because we didn't know any better, the mind attached other labels to this "I" thought, such as "I am good," "I am bad," "I have this problem," and so on, but those thoughts don't have anything to do with us because the very "I" thought itself, the sense of separation, is not actually who we are. Once you see the falseness of the "I" thought, that what we are is not an individual person at all, the identifications and ideas of a lifetime all collapse because they are all based on a false premise. There is no practice to overcome suffering. It is simply a matter of seeing that the false I is an assumption, that the whole mechanism is a conceptual house of cards. Then a lifetime of suffering evaporates. As Bob says, without the cause the I, can there be any effects, psychological suffering and bondage? As I sat on his couch at one of his talks listening to him say, "There is no person," suddenly it hit me. I looked and saw that right now and here there is not a separate person in the picture at all. In that moment, all my doubts and confusion evaporated. I realized that all problems and questions stem from the sense of an I that was assumed to be there at the center of my life. Upon actual looking, I discovered it was not there at all. 15 years of meditating could not accomplish what occurred in a few moments of direct looking. In that recognition arose a direct and immediate sense of clarity and peace. I intuitively felt that the searching was over. I recall raising my hand and asking Bob, "So when you see yourself as the ever-present awareness and that the I that we imagined ourselves to be is really non-existent, then there can be no more doubts, questions, or problems. Is that it?" He confirmed that this was so. From that moment on, I have not felt any serious difficulty or suffering, nor felt the slightest desire or urge to seek, meditate, or pursue any particular spiritual path. The whole landscape shifted and I intuitively knew the seeking was over. The I upon which everything was based was not there. However, the shining presence awareness was still there without effort, the simple fact of our own being. Finally, Bob pointed out that all things arise in awareness and never exist apart from awareness. It is all one substance, all one light, it is all that, it is non-duality. There is nowhere to go and nothing to obtain. Everything is resolved. We live, move, and have our being in that one ocean of light and never, ever move away from that. This was the understanding that came to me, courtesy of Bob Adamson. It is all words, but maybe a glimmer of something will come through. Chapter 2, Why I use the term natural state. I use the term natural state because this true nature that we are is effortlessly present, spontaneously available, and requires no pursuit or acquisition. To me, natural implies something outside the influence of or not a product of conceptual thought. It is easy and natural. This terminology is by no means original. I just happen to like it. Natural is also the meaning of the term Nisarga, as in the name Nisargadatta, so there is for me a remembrance of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, whom I admire and who was Bob Adamson's teacher. The term natural state also appears in other traditions, so it seems like a good non-denominational term. Whenever you use words, you have to pick something, so the term natural state seems as good as any. There are many good ones: presence awareness, cognizing emptiness, the clear light, the self-consciousness, the one mind, God or reality. They are all pointers. The word is not the thing, so there is no need to get hung up on the words. Chapter 3: Enlightenment in the Future. Right now you exist, you are aware. Without taking a thought, you are absolutely sure of your being. That is the essential reality being pointed to. All of the Buddhas and sages of all times are fully present at the core of the one who is reading these words right now. You will never attain this, never find it, and never know it as some object of thought or experience. Why? Because the very awareness that you are and have always been is fully and completely that now. We never become enlightened tomorrow because tomorrow is imagined in the mind. You always exist prior to the mind. At some point you turn back and notice the fact of your own being. Then you are home even though you never left home. This is not a result of some fantastic ability or spiritual prowess. It is just a matter of simple looking. Chapter 4: How this understanding unfolded for me. The way this understanding unfolded for me was through the following insights. Bob pointed out to me the truth of our nature as presence awareness or cognizing emptiness. Somehow that clicked for me. It was not so much the words which I had read countless times before. It was the energy or vitality coming through the words that was potent and impactful. I sensed he was not only saying the words, but also living from that realization. This enabled a resonance to occur. To meet Nisargadatta Maharaj in person and partake in a living dialogue with him would likely have been more potent than reading his book I Am That. There was a huge difference between reading the words on paper Your Awareness and having a direct disciple of Nisargadatta Maharaj tell me in no uncertain terms, You are awareness. After having seen this and feeling some sense of freedom, I still seemed to lose it when contradictory thoughts arose. Bob pointed out that this is in fact not possible. You cannot lose your true nature because it is the substratum of any thinking and perceiving. I realize that we can never leave this. Even if the thought I lost it arises, the awareness is there knowing that thought. So the thought is patently false. The knockout blow is seeing the absence of a person. There is no such entity in the machine. There are only thoughts, experiences, and objects arising and subsiding in awareness. There is no one controlling them and no one affected by them. Once this is seen, everything happens just as before, but the imagined person is removed from the film. The film goes on, but there is no person starring in it. There are thoughts but no thinker, actions but no actor, choices but no choice maker. Basically, there is no difference from before, except the sense of separation is gone, along with the psychological suffering, confusion and doubt that appears along with the belief in a separate I. There is no one at the controls. Life is happening, thoughts are arising, actions are occurring spontaneously. You as a separate person are not doing any of these things. You don't choose your thoughts, feelings, sensations. As Bob says, you are being lived. As a final tying up of loose ends, it was helpful to see the fact that all experiences are just movements in awareness. They are like waves arising and falling in the awareness that we are. It is all one substance. There is only one energy, one substance, one taste. Past, future, there, here, I, you, this, that, and so on, are all just conceptual distinctions. Even concepts are that awareness. So you can't win. So what is the result? As the writer Y. Wu Y once wrote, the only problem is that 99.9% of everything you think, say and do is for yourself, and there isn't one. Coming into alignment with the true state of affairs means that the usual strife, struggle and suffering based on wrong understanding vanishes. Life goes on. It is like a dislocated limb popping back into place. You can hardly say what happened, but suddenly everything feels a lot better. Nisargadatta Maharaj said something to the effect, "You can only put it negatively. There is nothing wrong anymore. There is a distinct recognition that the searching is over. You may read books or visit spiritual teachers, but you have the experience that they are saying what you already know." In actual practice, while this understanding is sinking in, the seeker is often plagued by vestigial doubts, questions, and concerns in spite of however advanced the intellectual understanding may be. I have seen many, including myself, able to converse on all this with the most incredible precision and verbal acumen. The only test is in day-to-day direct experience at the gut, emotional level. Is there any sense of suffering, separation, anxiety, or fear? Am I feeling doubt or metaphysical uncertainty? Is the knowledge of my true nature unshakable? If not, the understanding is not complete. The best course, it seems to me, is to find a living teacher and get your doubts resolved directly. Nisargadatta Maharaj used to say, "I am not interested in what you have let go of, but what you are still holding on to." A good teacher can help us resolve any remaining doubts. Then the understanding simply remains clear and steady and beyond doubt. For me, this understanding was triggered by my association with Bob Adamson, who in turn had realized this through contact with Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj in 1976. Chapter 5. All problems are for the I. All problems, issues, concerns, questions, dilemmas, and so on are for the I. For example, I am happy, I am sad. I know, I don't know. I had it, I lost it. I was born, I will die. I am good, I am bad. These are just a few examples of self-centered thinking. As you can see, all these binding thoughts revolve around the sense of I. Nail down the identity of the I and all problems resolve. The imagined sense of being a separate I is the source of all problems. Because the I as a thought is really very intangible, all types of other ideas get wrapped around it in order to give it some semblance of solidity. All the self-definitions, identities, and apparent conditioning hinge on the unexamined sense of I. The most direct teachings set aside all philosophizing and theorizing and go directly into an investigation of the import, the real meaning of the word I. This, I believe, is Ramana Maharshi's self-inquiry. What is this that I call I? We are constantly saying I all day long, all life long, but what is this I? If the cause I is seen to be non-existent, can all the effects, all the definitions built on the I survive? I had read about this idea for years, but my entire view of life was radically altered when I actually investigated this for myself. The moment I saw that the person I thought myself to be was not there, that it was a false assumption, I directly experienced a profound freedom from all problems, doubts, and suffering. It was remarkable. I did nothing at all. There was just a looking and seeing that the person, the separate I, was not there. There was not a trying to be free or solving of any intellectual puzzles. That is about all I can say. You can never find the answer in the mind, so it is useless to look there. No amount of thinking can free you from the riddles created by thought. Problems, if there are any, are only created by the mind. They are a product of thought, but you don't have to do anything with thought, such as get rid of it, modify it, or suppress it. Just see that what you really are, right here and now, is that presence awareness that is the basis on which thought is happening. That which is knowing all your sensations, feelings, and emotions, is radiantly aware. It is effortlessly knowing and being. It is simply the clear, spacious presence of awareness, or as the Buddhists say, cognizing emptiness. Get a feel for this. Have the willingness to look at this. Sense it, feel it, be it, relax into it. Know with assurance that you are not a limited person bound up in thought. You are the sky-like presence awareness in which the whole universe is appearing. The next time you think, I am this or that, I have a problem, or whatever, just drop the apparent problem and ask, who is this I that I think I am? Is this what I really am? You can even investigate and try to find this I in your direct experience. Is there a sensation, a thought, or a feeling that you can call I? We say I, but precisely what is it? Then it will dawn on you, hey. Am I not aware? Am I not present? Is not the presence of my true nature here, perfectly untouched, unsullied, like the sun shining above the clouds, completely unaffected by the appearance and disappearance of thought? This kind of looking will pull the drain plug out of the sink of the mind, and all problems will be sucked into the void of non-existence. I do not exaggerate when I say that a lifetime of problems will evaporate. As they say, a cave may have been dark for thousands of years, but when you bring a torch into the cave, the light instantly obliterates that darkness. Chapter 6: Understanding Awareness and Thought. When I came across Bob Adamson's book and CDs of his talks, inner changes started to happen. I didn't consciously do anything, but the grip of the conceptual thoughts began to loosen. Things began shifting and falling away. I could not even articulate what was happening, but there was an experience of freedom. I sensed it was right. When you come across a good, clear teaching, it is the wisdom and the clarity of the teaching that is liberating, not necessarily anything you do to make understanding happen. Ultimately, it is your own innate wisdom that is functioning in response to the clear pointers of the teacher. The you trying to understand, who seemingly gets it and loses it, who struggles and so on, is not who you actually are. It is just a play of thoughts, of concepts, of unexamined assumptions about yourself and the world. You innocently pick them up in the course of living. It is these thoughts that create the perplexity and confusion. Notice that when you are asleep or absorbed in some interesting activity, your problems disappear. It is a key point to see that all problems are just created in thought and nowhere else. This is fundamental. All problems, doubts, and confusion are generated in thought. Not being clear on our true nature, we believe the concepts and stories in the mind, and they take us for a ride. Your living awareness, who you really are, is utterly present and not affected in the least by thoughts. You are aware of the mind just like the sun shines on the clouds. You are utterly free of thought. Whatever thought says about you is untrue. You are prior to the mind. There is knowing, hearing, seeing, and sensing going on all the time spontaneously. This primary awareness is present. It is prior to any conceptual activity. There is a fundamental difference between awareness, or the direct experience of knowing, and conceptual thought, which is just words and labels. We take the words and labels to be real. Can you drink the word water? Is the thought I see the same as actual seeing? Do the eyes say I see? Or is there simply seeing and later the thought comes up I see? It is the same for all the other senses. Try to see the difference between awareness or non-conceptual knowing or direct knowing and the labeling activity of the mind. Of course, thought is also directly known in awareness. Thought is happening in awareness directly, spontaneously. Later the thought comes up I am thinking. That I is spurious. It is not really present, except as a concept. You shine as the living light of pure awareness at all times, never touched by thought or its definitions. Out of ignorance we tend to focus on the thoughts and labels, the stories and the person imagined in thought. A subtle shift brings you back to the simple recognition of the fact of your true nature as presence awareness. The mind can never grasp at your true nature because it contains thinking. However, you can know for certain at any moment your real nature because you know you are aware, you know you exist, even without taking thought about it. Normally, this is overlooked because it is so simple. The mind is apt to minimize this pointing, but it is utterly profound. If you have the good luck to meet someone living in this direct understanding, he or she will point you back to this relentlessly, until it is as plain as the nose on your face. It is useless to struggle to get this. Just let the pointing draw you in. Feel the resonance. It will get you. Chapter 7. It can't be that easy, can it? Questioner. Ha ha. John, glad to see you get it. Many is the seeker who has laughed when they finally got it, including Buddha. It is a cosmic joke. Question. If that is enlightenment, I have been enlightened forever without knowing it, all the while desperately searching for it. John, I am not sure you see how profound your words are. But basically, yes. What you are seeking, you already are. Just think over the core expressions of the great teachings. You are that your own mind is the Buddha, I and the Father are one, the eye by which I see God is the eye by which God sees me, and so on. This is the core insight at the root of all deeper spiritual teachings. A clarification may be helpful here. It is not exactly precise to say I am enlightened. An essential aspect of the understanding is that there is ultimately no separate I to be enlightened or unenlightened. Nevertheless, recognition of your true nature is possible. It is just that an individual cannot claim it as an experience. Question. You are kidding here. That's all there is to it? Is that what self-realization means? To simply know, feel, experience, and be the source of the thoughts about what you are, which never are and never can be what you actually are, because the real you precedes these thoughts and causes these thoughts. John. Yes. Don't underestimate this understanding. The mind out of habit will want to dismiss this. It will say this can't be it, it is too simple. And then you are off around the track again. If you see yourself as that which stands prior to thought, you are outside of time, the universe, duality, birth, death, you name it. There is no bondage to speak of. Question. I am the projector of images and not the images. I am the very thing being presence, awareness that wonders what the hell it really is. I am the life that is trying to figure out what life is all about. I am the medium of awareness out of which these thoughts emerge. Is that it? John, that is you. You are timeless, ever-shining presence awareness. You can never lose it and never find it, because the one searching is that for which he is seeking. From this point on, thoughts, feelings, actions, and decisions will spontaneously arise as they always have. There is no separate individual at all at the helm. The mighty universe unrolls in the vast light of your true being. Because you are not a limited person at all, there is no more room for questions, doubts, and problems or all the rest of the conceptual apparatus that pertained when you imagined you were a separate I. You are the timeless ground of being. If the mind should arise and say, but what about this and that? Simply notice the ideas as passing thoughts that have no relation to you at all. All thought, feeling, and perception appears in awareness. They have no existence apart from awareness. Just like waves arise and set in the sea, so do all thoughts arise and set in you. Thoughts are only vibrations in awareness. They are made of awareness. There is only one substance, one essence. There is only radiant, cognizing emptiness shining in all directions. That is all. You are that. There is only that. If you grasp this, the course is run. Question. There must be more to it than this. I mean, if this is it, the search is over right where it began. John. Yes. I couldn't have said it better myself. Question. It can't really be that simple. Can it? John. Yes. But I don't have to confirm it at this point, do I? Your question shows that the facade is beginning to crumble and the recognition is already dawning. Chapter 8. Dealing with the mind. It is key to see that the mind simply cannot get this understanding. The doership, the practicing, the meditating, and so on are all at the mind level, but your knowledge of your existence, your awareness, is here immediately in direct experience. The reason the mind cannot get it is because the mind appears in that. You are present whether the mind is there or not. Sensing, thinking, and functioning are happening spontaneously and quite effortlessly without the conceptual activity having much of a role. You are seeing right now, but are your eyes saying, I see? I see is a thought, but seeing is happening. The mind is like a keyhole. You go up to it and look into it. No problem, but then you imagine that your whole life is taking place in the view within the keyhole. If you just step back, you notice there is an entire universe outside of the keyhole. There is no practice or activity within the view of the keyhole that can take you beyond it because you are beyond it already. Just listen to what is being pointed out. Feel the resonance. Your inner wisdom awakens, and you begin to sense the truth that is being pointed out. That is all. You cannot do anything as a separate doer to understand who you are. If you want to do anything, at least question, who am I anyway? I have taken myself to be the mind, to be bound by the mind. Is that really true? Till this questioning occurs, we take the beliefs in the mind to be the reality. The mind is not an enemy, and there is nothing in particular that we need to do with it. It really does not have any momentum, but until it is questioned we remain fascinated with the show. It is our own interest that fuels the momentum. Once you begin to glimpse your true nature as the awareness in which the mind and all else appears, you are out of the game. No effort or struggle is involved. The effort and struggle are part and parcel of the conceptual mind. If you find yourself struggling or fighting with the mind, you have taken a wrong turn. You have overlooked the presence awareness and have jumped on board the train of thought. Realize you don't need to do this. There is nothing compelling you to do it. Just see that this is all taking place in thought, but awareness, the real you, is free already. It is that simple. You do not become free, you notice your present freedom. The binding thoughts in the mind all have their root in the initial thought of separation, that thought. Until that is clearly seen, the mind will continue to give trouble. Nail that down, investigate that one thing, and the entire lifetime of concepts and self-centered activity, the bondage of the mind, is resolved. I say this from my own actual experience. This kind of seeing completely undercuts the mind without any personal effort. The cure for ignorance is wisdom, which is just clear seeing. Initially, this may be pointed out by a teacher, but then your own seeing kicks in and you can take it from there. Soon the knowledge is unshakable, and the need for a teacher is done. The wisdom or recognition arising in you is the response to recognizing the truth being pointed out. Your own innate wisdom is awakened and leads you to what needs to be seen. There is an innate intelligence within you that is much greater than the thinking mind. You intuitively know this. Just have a little faith in that. Say with the pointers. Let them resonate. All will unfold naturally. You will verify it in your own living experience and confirm it by the freedom from suffering and limitation that ensues. Chapter 9. What about reincarnation? Question. It seems like many people are curious about life after death or everlasting life or reincarnation. I also agree that what we truly are always will be. If I am that, what do you think transpires to that when the fragile phenomenal experience of the human mind-body organism comes to its inevitable demise? I understand any answer is only conceptual speculation at best. I understand we should be concerned with who and what and where we are now, and not speculate in or about the future or the hereafter, because doing so sets the stage for our own suffering, but I am curiously optimistic. John, I don't claim to be an expert in metaphysical doctrines such as reincarnation and so on. Within the realm of appearances, and while one takes oneself to be a seeker, there are endless theories and doctrines. Ultimately, they are all products of thought and imagination. They seem compelling to the seeker because they provide reasons to explain his seeming separate existence. The level of the mind, there are endless theories to explain the whys and wherefores of the individual person. They are largely speculative and never have any finality, but was your real nature ever born? Do you have any evidence that it dies? Is it in a body? As a point of fact, when pressed, both Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj, the paragons of Indian spirituality of the last century, stated that reincarnation did not exist. Bob Adamson once said to me, "See the subtle trap trying to analyze what someone has said and what they mean. In doing that, presence is seemingly lost. Looking for a state or no state, a knowing or unknowing or anything at all, can only be conceptualization. This was in a different context, but you might find that in trying to unravel metaphysical conundrums in the mind that you overlook the obvious fact that you are free right now. Awareness is the changeless presence on which the universe appears. At a more relative level, we can descend into the realm of thought and metaphysical theories, but at that point one theory is as good as another, and they are all speculative. Stay with fundamentals. The answer is not in the mind. Even if one takes reincarnation seriously, who reincarnates? Investigation reveals there is no separate I. In the realm of appearance, you as an individual entity don't exist. The I is absent. How can the absence of an I reincarnate? If physical elements recycle, so be it. If thoughts recycle, so be it, but you remain as you are. The space like awareness that you are is timelessly present as it is. Either way you look at it, reincarnation looks rather tenuous. I am not attempting to deny the theories and mechanics of reincarnation, but it seems more direct to me to notice that there is only one awareness and everything is that. If waves reincarnate into other waves, so be it. The waves may be tremendously fascinated with where they came from, but the sea is not concerned. From the point of view of water, it is all one substance anyway. With your focus on your true nature as consciousness, you see that all theories are just movements in the mind. Awareness is real, thoughts are shadows. The dream of reincarnation is a passing cloud before the blazing sun of awareness, which you are now. In my experience, it is more liberating to stay with solid facts, like you exist and you know you exist, rather than to engage in metaphysical debates, which are interminable. Instead of wondering what one was in a former life or will be in the next life, why not investigate what one is right now? Chapter 10: When Beliefs Drop Away. When you are first exposed to this understanding and lifelong beliefs get challenged, it can be slightly disorienting. The reference points that we took for granted for so long start to drop away. We have built a life upon the concepts and beliefs of who we are. For years the focus has been to shore up the person, to accumulate, strengthen and solidify its beliefs and concepts. As you begin to see through the false ideas, the tide turns. Initially it may feel disconcerting or unusual, but at the same time you feel immensely freer and lighter. Too much thinking and analyzing all of this just brings in the mind. Ultimately, words are only useful in their function as pointers to your true nature. The attempt to clarify things at a conceptual level or articulate the understanding in words can generate a mild sense of confusion. At some point, you just see that the mind appears in this that you are. You know thoughts, but thoughts can never know you as that presence awareness. Knowing your beingness, your actual existence is that space like awareness is non-conceptual and immediate. It does not require a mediating agent like the mind or the senses. To the mind, your true nature is no thing that is, not an object. The mind cannot grasp no thing. This is baffling as long as there is a tendency to keep grasping for something objective. Fortunately, there is no need to do this. However, the old habits to do so may continue to arise for a while. If thoughts arise such as I feel lost, what do I do now? And so on, just question, who is this I that is lost or wants to know what to do? This I is just an empty assumption. The thoughts are only whorls of energy spinning in the light of awareness. There is no I at their center. The thoughts move on, but awareness remains free, luminous and untouched. There is no one lost, no one who needs to understand, no one to do or not do, no one to be afraid. The conceptual I is the cornerstone of the person with all of its problems, doubts and suffering. As the sense of identity shifts to your real being as presence awareness, the life of suffering dissolves like mist before the rising sun. There is no need to struggle to be what you already are. You are that now. Complete freedom is less than a step away. Chapter 11: The Bottom Line. The following is an excerpt from Bob Adamson's book, What's Wrong with Right Now, Unless You Think About It. Questioner: Bob, what is the bottom line? Bob: right here, right now you are present and you are aware of being present. Realize that you are that one without a second, pure presence awareness, and be what you are. Chapter 12, From Theory to Experience. What you are right now is awareness, or the sense of beingness. It is totally free, completely at peace, and utterly and finally attained, even at this moment. Not being clear on this, that we are, the mind has imagined separation and built a set of beliefs and identities upon this unexamined concept. When you get exposed to this type of teaching, several things begin to happen. First, you get a glimpse of what your true nature is. It is pointed out, perhaps repeatedly, until you see it and know it for certain. This is the most important insight to start with. Your actual being, which is radiantly present and alive, is that which is knowing your thoughts right now, is the truth that is pointed out. There is no other understanding or realization beyond this. In fact, you know this now. You exist and you know that you exist. All a teacher does is assure you with the greatest conviction that this is it. Most of us have had a lot of baggage in the form of beliefs about what this understanding is, how it is supposed to happen, and so on. This type of teaching helps to expose those erroneous beliefs, not to mention the beliefs we have about ourselves. It is only these unexamined beliefs that generate our suffering and our sense of being apart from the peace we are seeking. Everything happens as it happens. It is only from the limited view of the mind and its beliefs that we judge right and wrong. All evaluations are in the mind. From the point of view of what we are, everything is simply a manifestation of the deep harmony of what is, just an arising and ceasing in the light of awareness, which is ever at peace and free. This is true for you right now once you clear up the confusion about your real nature. This does not take time. There is no path to this, and no practice is required. It is just seeing the truth of things. Everything arises and sets in the light of your being. Nothing is separate from that. Forms appear and disappear, but nothing is ever lost or gained. Everything that appears arises from that, exists upon that, and subsides into that. In spite of the appearance and disappearance of people and things, there is a luminous, ever-present background that sheds a fragrance of perfection that permeates everything. That is your birthplace, your true home. Know yourself clearly, and all of this begins to make sense. It becomes your direct experience. If you are resonating with this type of teaching, then this understanding is already opening up for you. Just follow your heart and let the understanding unfold. Your own deeper being will lead you where you need to be and will reveal to you what needs to be known. Then you will realize that life is perfect here and now, and that you have never left the peace and truth that you are seeking. Stay with the pointers. Savor them like fine wine. Let the pointing unfold within your own heart. Most important of all, see your own true nature as it is. All the pointers are only to reveal this. Chapter 13. The Spiritual Search. Question: the question I keep asking myself is, does this dream of a search in a person who is searching have anything to do with the appearance of grace and realization? John: it depends on what is meant by grace and realization. To me, grace and realization are just other terms for your true nature, call it self, being, awareness, presence, God, or spirit. That never appears, as it is the basis on which all appearances arise and set. From the point of view of the one who imagines himself to be separate and a seeker, there are many questions that seemingly need to be understood. From the point of view of your actual nature as awareness, everything is simple, direct, and clear. Don't worry too much about the questions and issues that the mind raises. The answer is not in the mind. The grace and realization you are looking for is the ordinary awareness shining at your core right at this moment. Understand this and you understand everything. Question: is the motive to be free coming from that which is beyond? Because it seems to me to be part of the dream too. John: that is not beyond. It is here and now. Having apparently forgotten your true nature and identified with unquestioned beliefs in the mind, your innate wisdom simply moves to restore clarity. Some appearances turn back and realize their source, some don't, but it doesn't matter because no one has ever left that. Pure awareness is a brute fact. It is undoubtedly present and intuitively obvious. Questions appear at the level of thought and mind. As long as the existence of the separate I is not questioned, questions, even apparently cogent spiritual questions, will go on. Once you see your nature as awareness, you will find there are few, if any, questions remaining. You are home, you are at peace, there is a sense of oneness. The desire to seek, to know, and to do falls away because the root driver of all of this, the separate person, is not in play any longer. Losing, finding, awakening, and so on are all just appearances in the light of being awareness, which looks on with affectionate detachment. Question: is there even a point to the search? John, who is asking. Instead of trying to answer questions like this, you might find it is interesting to investigate who is asking. There is no ultimate finality or answer to questions as long as the sense of separateness survives. Whether the answer to this question is given as yes or no, you still need to know yourself and resolve the core fundamental metaphysical question, who or what am I? All questions are just different ways of asking, what is real? What am I? What is my true source? Clear up the fundamentals, and the other issues resolve themselves automatically. As far as whether there is a point to the search, I would say, if pressed, the answer is both yes and no. From the point of view of the seeker who imagines himself to be separate, there is no more relevant undertaking than to resolve the question, what am I? From the point of view of awareness, your real essence, the search is pointless, because you are already what you are seeking. Awareness is already free and completely present in all its fullness. The questions go on because the seeker is not clear on his true identity. See yourself as that awareness. See that the separate seeker is not really there, and the entire search comes to an end, because, as mentioned above, you are what you are seeking. Before this became clear to me, the sense of seeking had gone on in various forms for about 30 years. Afterwards there was and is a distinct sensation that the seeking is finally and completely over. It is not a mental assertion but a core gut-level sense. Question: what has been your experience with this? I'm guessing I'll need to find out for myself. John, you certainly need to see all this for yourself, or else it remains just an interesting story. None of it is particularly relevant unless something in you resonates. I have a sense that you are deeply interested in all this, so I am sure the unfolding is happening for you already. Chapter 14: Thinking versus Knowing Who We Are. Questioner: if I experience reality through the mind, how is it possible to go beyond it other than by changing the thoughts? John, I am not precisely clear on what you mean by experiencing reality through the mind. Your sense of being and awareness is actually unrelated to thought. You don't need to think to be aware. It is not necessarily intuitive from a mental perspective, but once you see this, things fall into place. Like you, I had read Nisargadatta Maharaj's books for several years. Yet in all the verbiage and trying to understand things with the mental perspective of looking for it as an object or experience, the obvious got overlooked, until Bob Adamson threw me back relentlessly upon what is here and now. Question: for example, now today after reading the articles on your website, I catch myself thinking, yes, but I read Nisargadatta 20 years ago and it resonated then, but I still identify with the mind. These are the types of thoughts that go through my mind. I can come back to asking myself if I exist, which is undeniable, and maybe there is a feeling of being closer to the truth, but then mind rushes in again and I am back in it again. For you or Bob, there must have been some fundamental change in viewpoint or perspective, and now you, even in mind, for your thoughts support your realization of what you have perceived, sense that intuitive truth. John, the bottom line is that you are that presence or awareness now. When you first get exposed to this, the mind and all the concepts want to rush in with what if, and but and so on. Then you are pointed back again and again to the fact of your own being. Through force of habit, we instinctively look to the thoughts as a gauge of where we are, but it is looking in the wrong direction. Thoughts appear in awareness, which is what you really are and always have been. It is like being above the clouds and then looking down at the clouds searching for the sun. You say, look at all the clouds. They keep arising. Where is the sun? But if you turn around, you notice that the sun is behind you, and it is illuminating the clouds. It is even what is allowing you to see them. The sun really has nothing to do with the appearance or configuration of the clouds. It is a subtle shift but has profound effects. We have been looking in the wrong direction, and this can be quickly remedied once this gets pointed out. It is not really anything you need to practice. You just notice it. The answer is not in the mind. If you ask most people to look across a room and say what they see, they will usually name the various objects. You will say they notice the space, but once this is pointed out, you notice that everything takes place in space. It is the same with awareness. Once you get a feel for it, the center of gravity starts to shift from fixating on the thoughts to just relaxing into your true being of self-knowing awareness. Question: how do I get there or here, as the case may be? John, you don't get there. You are there now. Your existence awareness is here and now always. If I can make a suggestion, don't be concerned at all with thoughts. The rising of thought has nothing to do with any of this. Be more interested in what thoughts appear in and on. That is the direction to explore. Dealing with thoughts is interminable and there is no freedom forthcoming from doing that. I know from experience, believe me. Know your true nature and thoughts take care of themselves. Just as a heads up in case you are wondering, thoughts will continue to arise for the rest of your life, just as they did before. But knowing your real nature, you will not be concerned like you were before. Peace does not lie in a peaceful mind, but in establishing your identity in that which is deeper than the mind. You are that even now. It just takes a little looking to clarify this. Chapter 15: When Thoughts Rush In. Questioner: thank you for taking the time to write about the natural state and things that happen when exposed to this teaching. I have Tony Parsons' book as it is, and I love the chapter "The Park." Actually,